Okay, so here we are again for another live stream on a Thursday at about 11:30 California time. So we're here every week. If you are new here, this is your first time watching the stream or the replay, make sure that you come back next week. So we are going to bring up some comments until we get some people in here. Some stuff to talk about. Let's see. Comments. Again, I never have this open beforehand. That would probably be useful. Okay, so good comments, like the video, blah, blah, blah. One person asked about how to pronounce out of here, which I will be making a short about, but we can start with that. A native pronunciation of the phrase out of here. Now remember, American pronunciation, English pronunciation in general, but especially American pronunciation is very dynamic. Okay, so we have everything from the clearly enunciated version of sounds and words on one end over to the faster, lazier, less clearly enunciated version, and all kinds of things that can happen in between. So if we clearly enunciate this phrase, it would be out of here, out of here. Usually we're not going to say it that way. Remember, enunciation is a tool. It is not the normal way to speak. So instead, we are going to probably, most likely, we're going to say outa. Okay. So just like we have wanna, gonna, have to with to. Hello, Gabriel. How are you? Hope everything is well. In this case, it's actually not to, it's of. And we're dropping the V on of, which we very commonly do. You don't have to, and there's times when we don't, but it's a common thing that happens. So out of can become outa, outa. So it's not out to, right? It's outa, out of. Then of and here, whoops, not her, of here, we get a couple things. Number one, you can say of veer, of veer, of veer, of veer. Drop the H as possible. But most likely, especially with the outa in front of it, we're either going to keep the H or we're still going to keep that V dropped, and we'll say out a year, out a year. If it's really fast, you can still drop that H and it'll sound sort of like ow. And that's a flat D, by the way. Ow, ow, here. I like that. Out of here. Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. Right. Let's get out of here. So, hello, David. Welcome to the chat. I hope you're doing well. I just got your Patreon message. I haven't finished reading it, but here we are. I looked at the time and I was like, oh, it's 11:30. Got to do the live. So, out here. Anyway, the you can keep the H also. Out of here. Out of here. That's perfectly fine. So, again, it's dynamic. It's arranged. There's different things that can happen, like dropping the H or not dropping the H. Either way can happen, right? So the most common, most likely way that we're going to pronounce this phrase out of here is either A as out of here with that H, but the flapping D, outa, or maybe dropping the H out of here, out of here. As I said, especially in very fast speech, we'll probably drop that H. The more that you slow down, the more things tend to get a little clearer. They tend to get, we'll have less linking when you slow down more. And it's a scale, right? Some rules really only happen maybe in faster speech, where some rules might actually happen almost all the time unless you're really clearly emphasizing. So anyway, the lives always cheer me up, so I'm doing gooder. Better, exactly. Yes, gooder. Well, that's good. Delio. I know it's not Delio, but from an English perspective, I read that and I want to say Delio. So I might say it that way sometimes. Delio Hector. Hi, Josh. Greetings from Mozambique, Africa. Oh, interesting. Okay, from Africa. So is that, because I know there's, because your name looks Spanish to me. Could also be Portuguese. I know that there's a place in Africa that speaks Spanish. I don't know if that's Mozambique or if that's just your username, not your real name. But yeah. Anyway, greetings from Mozambique. Or maybe you're just visiting Mozambique. I don't know. But anyway, yes, thanks for tuning in all the way from Africa. The joys of the internet, right? This is where we are today. Thanks for joining us. How are you? I'm fine, for the most part. I'll just say the morning didn't start off too well, and we'll just leave it at that. But lives should be positive. I want this to be a good space, so I'm not really going to go into that. Wendell. Welcome back, Wendell. Hello. I tried upgrading my membership, but I couldn't. Interesting. I have no idea about that. I really don't. If you can't for some reason, that sounds like a YouTube problem. And I know Google in general is just like they have no customer support, like at all. So I'm not sure. I really don't know how to do that. There's a chance, because I recently deleted the top tier one because I realized that I can't limit the number of people. That's the one where you can get an hour consultation with me once a month. I have that still on Patreon, but on Patreon I can limit the number of people. And I realized on YouTube, since I can't limit the number of people, if I have 20, 30, 40 people on that, I'm going to be doing that nothing but that all the time, and that's not going to work very well. So I had to limit it. So I deleted it from YouTube. So if you're trying to sign up for that highest one, maybe there's just a glitch in the system, and because I removed it, so it's not available. But I assume you're probably not trying to sign up for that. You're maybe just trying to go to the next level higher or something. So I really don't know. I wish that I had an answer there. Daniela, welcome. Welcome. Thanks for stopping by again. I hope you are well. So we're getting things going here. Wendell, I hope you can help me as always. I am getting my English better every day. So yeah, collocations, I automatically assumed it was a day. Better every time, more. Okay, so better is already more. So simply put, right, my English is getting better every time, and that I would assume meaning each live stream. Otherwise you would say every day or every week. Today I have some important questions. Please help with them as you can. No problem. Yes, definitely let me know your questions. Delio, now we speak Portuguese here. My dad just gave me a Spanish sounding name. I see. Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, that's cool. Very nice. We learned something new. Gabriel already said hi. Yes. Okay, so hello again. Is there a word in English that describes the physical sensation when you're nervous and anxious and you feel like something is stuck in your throat, making it harder to speak? You're nervous and anxious. Should be frog in your throat, but I don't. I have to double check that one. Define frog in your throat. Because I think that it could also be just if you're just having difficulty speaking, not necessarily because of anxiety or anything. Let's see. So a frog in one's throat, difficulty speaking because of hoarseness or the need to cough or clear one's throat. So that's just physical. An inability to speak due to overwhelming emotion, especially fear. So yeah, so it could be either one. It doesn't have to have the emotional component. But you kind of feel sort of like there's something sort of stuck in your throat. We say a frog in your throat. So you'd say I have a frog in my throat. Which is kind of a weird expression, but there's lots of idiomatic expressions that are very strange. I wouldn't be surprised if you have the exact same one in Portuguese, because I don't know if they have it in Spanish, but a lot of the time between European languages, we have like the same or almost the same expressions. So that's that. Wendell, number one, what are some common features in American English sentences stress related to politeness and or respect due to authorities versus informal language? For example, shifting function word into a clear V. Clear V. It feels like that got cut off. So, Wendell, if that first one got cut off, because I know you're continuing to ask some questions here, go back and make sure that you're not missing part of that, because a clear V, I'm not sure what that means. But what are some common features in American English sentences? So stress related to politeness, common features of stress related to politeness or respect versus informal language. Off the top of my head, I really don't know. It's what I will say though is it's not so much about the stress; it's more about the intonation. Because the stress pattern is the stress pattern, right? Certain words are stressed, or certain syllables are stressed, and that's just how they work, right? It's just the English language. We don't use stress itself as a form of like politeness. So if I say like apple, I'm not going to say like apple to make it like formal or something. But the way that we sort of color the stress, that's what we call intonation, right? So like the way I just say, the way that we color the stress, I could have said the way we color the stress, the way we color the stress. See, it's, and I'm getting my body involved in it too. It's like, it kind of feels, I'm emphasizing it there. In relation to politeness versus politeness or respect versus informal language, I would have to look that up because off the top of my head, I'm not sure. That is something that I will probably have a video about at some point in the future. But another thing I'll tell you right now is that in American English, this is a very general statement. In American English, it doesn't matter that much. It doesn't matter that much. There are places and times when it matters, and it can have an effect. Obviously, having a certain tone, intonation can potentially sound rude, whether it's formal or informal. It doesn't really matter. So we do use intonation in ways that can affect the politeness. But as for specifically like formal versus informal settings, American English is very generally speaking, American English is quite informal. That doesn't mean we don't have formality. We definitely do. But number one, it's not, we would say, baked into the grammar as much as it is in other languages. Like some languages, like Japanese, for example, they have like an honorific form, and I forget what the opposite is. I forget what it's called, but it's like where if you're talking to somebody of a higher status, like especially a really higher status, you use like one form of the verb, and then if you refer to yourself when talking to that person, oh, it's the humble form. You use the humble form, and so it creates within the language itself, so like the grammar of the language, it creates this like distance between you and that person. English doesn't have a whole lot of stuff like that, if anything. So again, it's a very general statement, but I wouldn't worry too much about that right now. There's a reason I haven't talked too much about it yet, and that's aside from trying to build the course out. It's not generally that big of a point. 1.1, does pronouncing you with the schwa at the end of a sentence sound polite and respectful? Okay, so this is a good question. This is something that is about reductions rather than the intonation. This is something that can have an effect. You can reduce, so it's u, right? You. It can actually reduce two ways. It can reduce to a schwa, or it can reduce to what I call the high schwa, the like in book. You say you. Not in clearly enunciated speech. Okay, that's one of the tricks. Remember, it's a range here. So if you're speaking quickly and you reduce it to instead of it will sound fine. Like nobody's going to notice. It's actually sort of a bridge between oo and or oo and I'm going to have a special lesson on that in the probably near future. Something I discovered, but this is one reason why I discovered the bridge idea, not the part. But this is like if you say, for example, if you say really clearly, like it's like, hey, do you want to go? Do ya, and you make it really clear. You're not that you're emphasizing, but you're clearly saying yeah instead of just like a quick little reduction, like do you wanna, that sounds fine. But if you say do ya, especially if it's at the end, that can sound more informal. So if it's in the flow of faster speech, it's not going to sound informal. But if it stands out in any way, then ya, reducing you to ya, can sound more informal. So if you say like, I told you, sir, that sort sounds like you're using sir, which is like, okay, so there's a certain politeness there, but then you're saying I told you, and it actually sounds like it conflicts. Like you're being informal with this person that you're calling sir. And some people have that kind of relationship, like if you're, say, just example off the top of my head, you're a rich guy or girl and you have a butler or a driver, right? But you're more informal with them, and you're okay with them, being more informal with you. And so, they say, oh, I told you, sir, then that could exist, but it naturally sounds like it kind of conflicts. So you want to say like, I told you, sir. And you wouldn't want to reduce there. Is it correct to say wait a while instead of wait a while or wait for a while? I think all of them are correct, but I'm not pretty sure. So, okay, one note about pretty sure. I know this isn't your question, but when we use pretty sure, like pretty as an amplifier, like very or a lot, it's positive. So if you say I'm not pretty sure, that sounds like a conflict and it sounds like bad grammar. You'd say I'm not really sure. Really can be used positive or negative, but not pretty. Unless you move the not. If you say I'm pretty sure it's not right, say it's like a different part of the sentence, and that's okay. Anyway, okay. So one, I'm pretty sure. This is a spelling problem. I'm pretty sure a while is just supposed to be one word. Like there's never a space between it. I could be wrong about that. What's the difference according to the dictionary? Oh, okay, here we go. There are rules, but who's listening? I don't know, not me. The word a while is an adverb meaning for a while. The two-word expression a while is the article a plus the noun while, which means a period of time. Okay, so yes, I wasn't even thinking about that. Most grammarians feel that a while as one word should only be used to modify a verb, and a while should be used after prepositions or in phrases like a while ago or a while back. Broken rules. The rules governing usage of the adverb and phrase are frequently broken. However, in fact, some people who observe language patterns note the usage of a while as one word after a preposition or with words like ago or back is becoming so common that it may eventually become standard. Okay, so, and this is why I actually wasn't sure about it and I had to look it up. So the first part of your question between a while and a while as one word, don't worry about it. Just always use one. I would always do this, use it as one word. And it means for a while. Now, that might also depend on the context and exactly how it's being used. Let me go back to this. Grammar details off the top of my head are not my strong suit. Okay, so let's look at some example sentences. Perhaps having to wait a while isn't an entirely bad thing. Okay, so that would mean for a while. She was having computer trouble, she told him, and would be offline for a while. That means for a while. It's same thing. When the touch me not plant is touched, its leaves fold up, its stems, this isn't even written right, its stems droop. Oh, Yeah, somebody wrote that wrong. After a while, one word, the plant goes back to normal. That's after. So it's not necessarily for. It depends on the context of whether you would say for. So using for a while depends on exactly what you're saying. It may or may not be for, but the a while part doesn't matter. So it says here, right, like this example, after a while. So after some time. It really doesn't matter. This is the distinction between a while and a while is disappearing, and you can ignore it. And then for a while, as I was saying, that just depends on specifically what you're saying. The wait a while can mean wait for a while. And actually, because it's wait, that would be we wait for a certain amount of time. So it would imply for. You don't have to say for. But if you use a while in a different type of sentence, like after a while, blah, 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 then it's not for, it's, but it's still a while. It's a period of time. So technically, yes, all of them are correct. Your assumption would be correct there. That's the short, simple answer. Wendell, who told that lie? The guy on the radio told it. Is the sentence correct? Yes, absolutely. Because we're talking about telling a lie. So someone told it, referring to the lie. I don't see why there would be anything wrong with that. If you can maybe clarify why you're not sure if it's correct, then we can talk about that. But this is very simple grammar that is, of course, correct. One thing that we might do, because just like it can refer to a particular thing or even action, we use do to replace a verb that we already mentioned. So we have tell and lie. Who told that lie? You can say the guy on the radio did it. The guy on the radio did it. Or you can even just say did without the it. That would probably be the most common. The guy on the radio did. But the full sentence would be told it. What is the so-called mainstream American English? Does it have the on boundary, a well-known phonological difference between Midland and Northern accents? Good question. I have no idea. I wouldn't worry about it. So the so-called, I can answer this though, the so-called mainstream American English. I have a lesson talking about why there's more than one neutral pronunciation, more than one neutral accent in American English. And I don't know if this directly addresses your question, but the English pronunciation that most teachers teach you is a semi-fake accent that very few, if any, natives actually speak. And there are natives from all over the country, even if they're not from, like the South sounds generally different, but you could come from, the Midwest, you can come from the West, you can come from the East Coast, you can come from Hawaii or Alaska. And people who want to be actors or even sometimes news reporters, they will sometimes take pronunciation classes to learn this neutral pronunciation that most teachers teach you, because nobody actually speaks it, but it sounds neutral. But the reality of it is that the most of the country, with the big exception being the South. The South is the big exception area. There's a couple other little exception areas, like areas of New York and stuff. But most of the country, most people in the country, regardless of if they're from the West Coast, the East Coast, the middle of the country, they will sound neutral or very close to neutral. And that would be the mainstream, because most Americans sound American, right? There's a reason why it's called an American accent. There's certain features, like we pronounce all of our R's, we flap D's, even if it's a T, given the right conditions, and it gives it that American sound. There are technically very small little differences between, say, people on the West Coast and people in the middle of the country, or like in the North or whatever. So technically speaking, there are accents, but those differences are so small, like the cot merger. It's such a small difference in the flow of speech that both of them still sound neutral. At least most of the time, if someone really emphasizes, right, like if I say it's hot, or someone says it's hot, then it's going to kind of like stand out a bit. But in the flow of normal speech, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So the mainstream general American accent would just be the way most Americans sound. Does it have the on boundary? I haven't heard about the on boundary. Let's look this up. Define on boundary in American English. It's defining the word boundary. Okay, let's do on boundary in American English. I'm not getting any results for this. So I don't really know what the question is. So you'll have to maybe give me a resource. It won't let you post links, but if you can tell me like what to Google, then I can maybe try to look it up. But you also have another thing here, might be related. Is there any regional differences between words like boss, talk, especially with not the word on? So I guess it's related to that sound in on. I think you're pointing to the cot merger. So yes, there would be some differences. Some words. So for people like me who have the cot merger, any word that would use ah and any word that would use aw become just ah. Okay, it just goes back here. And I've talked about this many times before. People who don't have the cot merger, they have the two sounds, the ah and aw, where I just have ah. And so boss, talk, on, I pronounce all these the same, which is how I teach you guys, because not only will it still sound neutral and natural, but it's easier. You don't have to learn two sounds. You can learn one sound. How to pronounce. There are, in a reduced way, there are two people. Well, I wouldn't necessarily call it a reduced way, although technically I guess it is a reduction. You can use a spoken contraction, because contractions are technically reductions, I guess. And it's tricky. It's kind of tricky. I actually think I have a short coming up that uses there are in the sentence, but there. So you have to go air, right? Because it's there, so it's R colored eh. And then you immediately repeat the vowel. So we would never write this contraction. You're not supposed to write like that's going to look really bad, right? We do it with the there is apostrophe s. We write that contraction and it looks fine. The plural you're not supposed to ever write, but in speech, that's like the most common way to say it. We're just going to say there. So there are two people. There are two people. There were, and you're not trying to hold the r. That would be like there. Okay, you have to sort of like reset it, like redo the vowel, not the air part. It's not there, right? There were. So re-push out the What is the normal way or the default way of pronouncing auxiliary verbs at the start of a sentence with a schwa sound or with a clear enunciated vowel, especially have as auxiliary verb at the start? I'm not sure I understand the question. Let's see. What is the normal way or default way of pronouncing auxiliary verbs? So there might be a little bit of misunderstanding here. From what I understand of the question, my answer would be it's going to depend on the word, right? Like did would be do in the past tense. If I say, did you do it, right? That did is a helping verb. It doesn't reduce to a schwa. Like maybe in really fast speech, if I say like, did you do it? Did you do it? Did like maybe, but it's supposed to be eh. It's supposed to be did. Did you do it? Did you do it? So that's the normal or default way of pronouncing it for that particular word. Call it with speed. Doesn't matter. There's no normal or default way. And that depends on how clearly you're speaking. If I like it, do you like it? Then I'm gonna say do, maybe even a little bit of instead of oo, but not into a full schwa because I'm enunciating more, right? If I make it really enunciate, I say, do you like it, right? That sounds like maybe I've asked you 5 times and you're not answering me. And so I'm saying, hey, like I'm starting to sound kind of annoyed when I really break it down, because it's like, are you stupid? Can you not hear me? Like, what's going on? So usually we're not going to go all the way down to that point. If I'm speaking really fast, do you like it? Duh, 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 just a schwa. Do you like it? Do you like it? Or even the again, duh, duh, duh. Do you like it? Do you like it? Do you like it? Do you like it? It doesn't particularly matter. There's not a normal or default way of pronouncing these. It depends, one, on how the word is pronounced, and it depends, number two, on how clearly you are enunciating that particular word, which by default would just be the speed, right? If you can still speak quickly and kind of point out a particular word, like if you want to emphasize its past instead of present, instead of saying like do you, or let's reverse that. If you want to emphasize its present instead of past, like say I was asking you about things in the past, and then I say, okay, well, do you like it now? Do you like it now? So I'm going to emphasize that ooh a little bit, hit the ooh sound, even though I'm speaking faster, to emphasize that it's present now instead of past, which we were talking about. For have, there are ways that have can reduce, especially with speed. Like I kind of just said like have kind of, not actually like a straight but have is generally supposed to be have. It's like it can reduce, but it's it's have. If we get really lazy with it, of course you can use the lazy which sounds kind of like so instead of have, like have you done it, I say have you, have you. It's still it's not that's probably the most common way that it sort of reduces, and if it's a helping verb, it's most likely going to be pronounced with that lazy for sure, or the lazy for sure, unless you emphasize it, right? Maybe you can reduce to if you're really lazy and speaking quickly. You don't want to say like have you seen it. That's not right. It's too enunciated. So as I said, it depends on the exact word and how that word may or may not be able to reduce. So it depends on the word, but a lot on the speed and how clearly you're trying to say those words. Then also to add this, because I guess this is kind of part of your question, the schwa is not the normal or default way. Now the schwa might be the most common way. Okay, so just because it's the most common doesn't necessarily mean it's the confusing, but I would think of like the default as being, oh, actually, no, that's not right. I can't say that. In terms of reductions, if you're speaking normal speed or quickly, then the default or normal what thing would be to reduce to a schwa if that word reduces to a schwa, like do or you. If you are speaking more clearly, then the normal or default thing would be to not reduce it to a schwa, right? So it's really, again, it's about how clearly you're enunciating and or how fast or lazily you're speaking. So it's dynamic. That's what I've said about many things before. So we'll move on there. Delio, quick question. That's kind of weird, but quick question. What does the phrase "nuff said" mean? So "nuff" is sort of an extreme reduction of "enough," because enough, that second syllable, N-O-U-G-H, that's how it's spelled, but it's pronounced nuff. It's N plus plus f. It's just 3 sounds. And then when we say nuff said, we're just reducing the E, or dropping the E, and we're saying nuff said. And then with said, it sounds a little more informal, but that's like when like the point has been made, right? It's like it's clear what the point is, and you say, yeah, nuff said. You know, like I don't have anything else to say because the point is proven or whatever. But again, it does sound more informal. David, I recently looked up the word mistake because I wanted to see how the dictionary divides the word. Oh, I hate the way the dictionary divides words for pronunciation. This is a good question. I'm glad you brought this up. I'd like to know whether in your mind you think of this word as mistake or mistake. It's a very good question. I'm pretty sure the dictionary is going to do it as mistake. No, actually, I'm not sure what the dictionary would do here. My brain is off today. Okay, so yeah, it does. So it separates it as mistake. This can be a little bit of a tricky, subtle thing. Sometimes I like the way the dictionary does, and sometimes I don't. It actually seems to be very inconsistent with the dictionary. Kind of like some of the IP inscriptions seem to be very, very inconsistent, especially around the sound, dark L sound. But sometimes there's more than one way that you can look at it, because S is what I would call a bridge sound. Because a lot of the times when you have some sort of, whether it's inside a word or between words in the flow of how the sounds are being produced, a lot of the times, like say if you had like a consonant connect to a vowel, or that's the most common, easiest one, the consonant connect to a vowel, it will usually sound like that consonant sort of like detaches from the word that it's a part of and connects to the start of the next word and becomes part of that word. So if I say like, I don't know, when I see you, when I, and obviously it's really fast, but if you listen closely, it kind of sounds like when I instead of when I, right? There's no division between the N and the I. In the case of a sound like S, I call it a bridge sound because it actually sounds kind of like it's still connected to both because of the nature of how the S works. You can sort of like just sort of go through the sound from like one sound through the S into the next sound, and it'll just sound like one big thing. So sometimes I think there's more than one way that you can look at how you would divide the syllable, and it would still be perfectly fine. But in this particular case, surprisingly, I would actually agree with the dictionary, because now if we think about it etymologically, right, it's miss meaning inaccurate or wrong or something lacking or missing, right? That's why we have the word miss, M-I-S-S. So it's miss and then take, meaning like what you took from it, your understanding of something. So it was, or, you know, what you did, what you tried to do. Take doesn't work very literally translated here, but not translated, but you know what I mean? So it's supposed to be like mistake, and that's how it became mistake, right? But just because the words get put together that way doesn't mean that the pronunciation is going to flow that way. So here, technically you could look at S as a bridge sound and say like mistake, and it's actually just like one big long syllable, but obviously there are two syllables there. So I think it would be most appropriate in this case to attach the S to the T, because S is one of the very few consonants that actually likes to connect to most other consonants. It'll connect to T and P and K. It'll connect to M, like this morning, sm, not this morning, right? Instead of this morning. So S is a bit special. Anyway, moving on. Thanks. You're welcome, Wendell. And as I said, Wendell, there was in that first question you had, which I assume you might go back and look at my answers. And the first question you had, it just into a clear, you said shifting function word into a clear V. And I don't know if that got cut off. So if you can, I didn't answer that question because, or I tried to answer it, but if you could fill that in there, I might have a little more to say about that. But either way, we'll move on. David, also, ever since I can remember, I've always perceived the word coincidental or coincidence to sound like coincidence, with the initial coin being quin. Okay, well, first point, it's not coin. It wouldn't be coin. That would be coincidental. That's, or coincidence. So it's not oi. It's not the oi diphthong. It's coin. It's an O with a small W linking to I, the second vowel, like it or in both of those words, coincidence. So it Actually, it would probably be better written with a dash. So for like co-dash, that would be a little more reflective of the pronunciation. If you're speaking quickly, then you can kind of because that small linking W is there. In faster speech, you can sort of reduce that O to pretty much nothing and say like coincidental. And it's going to sound the same to us. Like we're not going to notice that you're dropping the O. Like even me saying it, like I'm trying to completely remove the O and it sounds like a perfectly pronounced word. I say coincidental. It sounds like I'm saying coincidental, just faster, even though I'm not saying the O anymore. So you are correct there. That's not the fully clearly enunciated way to pronounce it. And even if you're not clearly enunciating, we will still often say coincidental or coincidentally, or it's a coincidence. You'll still hear that. But this dropping of the O and keeping that linking W is a common variation in normal and faster speech. When I see the word written phonetically in dictionaries, I usually see the coin part written as coin. Exactly. Yeah. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on this. So there you go. But there's a small linking W between there, which the dictionary, of course, isn't going to tell you. It's not coincidentally, right? Is the phrase "everyone has their own problems" correct? What possessive pronoun should I use? Very good question. I'm glad you asked this. I don't get a whole lot of these questions, but I haven't gotten too much to grammar videos yet. So yes, this is absolutely 100% correct. And depending on who you ask, different people will give you different reasons why it would be correct. And also depending on who, very, very, very wrong, and you should never do it. So let's figure out what's going on. That's the nice term for them. They will tell you that this is absolutely wrong and that you should never use it because there is a plural pronoun, and we're talking about, I mean, like, okay, so everyone, yes. See, this is where it can get kind of confusing for a lot of English learners because everyone means like all people, but we say everyone has, not everyone have, right? So like he has. So we're using that singular conjugation, which is correct. Everyone has. So we think about it as not like all people as a group. It's just like any particular person, any one particular person in the world has problems, right? So the grammar could be a little confusing there. But as for there, so we're saying everyone, which is technically singular, has, which is the singular conjugation, there, which is the plural pronoun, and then own problems. So because of that, the grammar police will tell you this is wrong and you shouldn't do it. And I would very, very strongly disagree with the grammar police for quite a few reasons. But the main point here is that what has happened in English, I don't know when this started, but it's very solidified at this point. It's one of those things where I've talked about before a bit about how some grammar rules are like in the process of changing. Some are very early on in changing. Some are sort of like halfway through that process, and it kind of like, it sounds good even though it's wrong. But the other way also sounds good. And then there's things that have either almost completely or completely changed, but the grammar police will still say they're wrong. And this is one of those cases. So the reason why we use there, one of the uses of they, their, them, the plural pronoun, one of its uses isn't, so one use is to refer to plural, like a plural thing, a group, right? So loud noises outside. Make sure it's still on. I don't know, my battery's gonna die. I don't know if you guys can hear the sirens, but they're going. So if I say like, I'm talking about my friends and I say, yes, they all have their own problems. Perfect, right? But one of the special uses of they, their, them is to refer to an unknown person. So this would actually be he or she, or in the possessive case, his or her. So the grammar police will tell you you're supposed to say everyone has his or her own problems. And that's another perfectly fine way to do it. There's nothing wrong with that, except it's kind of a mouthful to say his or her when you could just say their. And so I think that's why historically there started to be used as this sort of like unknown neutral type pronoun to replace the phrase his or her, to just make it shorter and easier. So it's absolutely 100% fine. There's no formality to it. It's just a normal part of the English language that everybody uses, or almost everybody uses, except for the grammar police for the most part. You could still say his or her. That's not a problem. So yeah, that would be that. So yes, you should use that. Should is a bit strong, but there's nothing wrong with that. There is one more detail that I'm not going to bring up related to using there, because it's a little more political. But some people will give you politically motivated reasons, which is perfectly fine. I don't disagree with it, but I don't think that is a good explanation for the grammar here and what has happened. So I don't think it's particularly relevant to the grammar question. What phrase or phrases do you guys commonly use when you stop someone, could be a teacher or a stranger in the street, and want to ask them for help, but you can tell they're in a hurry? Okay, you can tell they're in a hurry and don't have much time. Excuse me. Excuse me is always a good one. Anytime you want to get somebody's attention, especially if it seems kind of inconvenient, or you seem like you might be intruding a bit, but it's an important, urgent thing. Yeah, like excuse me or sorry. Probably both of those. Excuse me, sorry, but blah, 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 blah. That's usually what we'll do. We'll have a phrase like that. So can't go wrong with excuse me. The best I could find was the phrase hold up. That's so informal. Something like, excuse me, can I hold? Oh, okay, I see that use of hold up. See, because you could use hold up meaning like wait for a second, like well, hold up. If you go up to somebody, you just say, hold up, can I ask you a question? That's going to sound really, really informal. But if you're using hold you up for a minute, meaning can I stop you for a minute, that's perfectly fine. That's not informal. Okay. Or I don't want to hold you up, but okay, it doesn't sound natural to me though. That's perfectly natural. Okay, so I was thinking of like that initial thing, like how do you get their attention, like, to start interacting with them? But it seems like you're asking just past that, like how would you sort of phrase that? You could use hold you up. There's nothing wrong with that. It does sound maybe a little strong, as in like this might take more than a minute. Because usually we use hold someone or something up, or we talk about a hold up as a noun as like some sort of delay, and so it can actually sound not like a short minor inconvenience, but like a real inconvenience. So I'd maybe be a little careful with that, but there's nothing particularly wrong with it. If you say I don't want to hold you up, but blah blah blah, what I would probably say instead for that part of the sentence, so I say like, excuse me, sorry, but or sorry, it's like, excuse me, I don't want to take your time, but, or I don't want to take too much of your time. Maybe if you say too much, it kind of sounds, it might be a bigger thing, but yeah, I don't want to take your time, but, I mean, if you're asking them a question, I would probably just say like, excuse me, sorry, but can I ask you a question? Or say you're trying to find where the library is. You say, excuse me, sorry, where's the library? Right. You just make it short and sweet, get right to the question, whatever it is that you're bothering them about. So that's going to be the easiest thing. You don't need all this extra stuff in there. Just get to the point. Gabriel, if I'm speaking with a group of friends and one of them is always interrupting me when I'm speaking, is it correct to say that I'm being heckled, or it only applies to public speeches? Heckled does not just mean interrupting. Obviously a heckler does interrupt. But heckling is when somebody really dislikes you, or they really disagree with what you're saying, and they're trying to interrupt you, or like talk against what you're saying because they don't like you or they don't like what you're saying. So yes, usually you will see that in public speeches. I don't think we really use that word outside of that context. So no, I would not say it's correct to say that you're being heckled, even if that person is like, they don't like you and they're trying to like go against your argument or something. They're just being rude. they're they're not heckling you. That would be the wrong use of the word, I think. The upside down, right? Because the reason why we call it upside down, right, is because normally the V, right, is like this. So the upside, meaning the top part of it, right, is up here. So the 2 points are up here. If we make that upside down, we're going to take what is the top, make it down, and flip it. So now it's the upside is down, the downside is up. We don't say downside up, we say upside down. So that's how you can remember. Stressed schwa, yes, has the same intonation in the word cut, merger. What? I don't know what merger means. Maybe that's from what I was talking about earlier. But the upside down V has the same intonation in uncut. So you're talking about like between the two, like there's the un and the cut. I'm not exactly sure what the question is here, like, because you're talking about the intonation, and this would actually be about the stress, not the intonation. But it's uncut, right? So the stress is on the second syllable, should be, meaning that the first part would probably just be like a true schwa, the upside down E, lowercase e, and then an IPA, and then the second one would be the upside down D, but they sound the same, uncut. It's just one is shorter, faster, maybe a little smaller, and then the second one is a little more open, and a little more, little louder. So they sound basically the same, yes. I assume that's the question. If it's not, you can restate your question. That's fine. David got rid of a message. It's okay. You're demonstrating the unmerged ah contrast. Wait, I'm saying ah because if I see ah, I'm going to think of it as the like in cat. So I guess you're just talking about the non-merged ah, right? So ah and like ah and ah. So often at this point you're totally nailing it. Oh, well, thank you. I'm never sure if I'm doing it right, like, but now that I can hear it a lot better, whenever I hear somebody use it because they're like, from a different part of the country or something, I try to mimic it, and so I'm getting better at it. But anyway, is native's preference for theirs as opposed to the grammatically correct therer connected with the fact that theirs is just less clunky and easier to say? It's a good question. So I've talked about that point before, as well as one of the things that are changing, or that have pretty much changed. And I've explained why I think we're sort of reducing it to that singular usage. So I won't go into that again here, but yeah, I mean, it is less clunky. It is easier to say. I mean, for a native, it's not difficult to say therer. Like, I have no difficulty saying that. But obviously, instead of repeating an R, if I could just go from an to a Z, right? In terms of the physical mechanics of the mouth and what it takes, like I don't have to like re-push out the R. Relatively speaking, yes, it's going to be simpler. It's going to be easier. Not necessarily difficult to say therer for us. So probably that might be part of it. Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it, because one thing that does happen as languages change over time, and this is one reason why we have contractions, right? The English language at one point didn't have any contractions, like I'm, your, whatever, and now we do. Why? Because people started bringing them together and dropping sounds, and so it's simpler, it's easier, faster to say. Can you say I haven't as I haven't in fast speech? Well, welcome, Finn. Yes. Good question right off the bat. I haven't done it. Yeah, in fast speech, that's okay. If you get lazy with it, you can drop into that schwa. There would be sort of a range here. The first sort of like reduction or link that we would do here, drop the H, connect I to ah, like probably a lazy ah, with a small Y. I haven't. You speak really, really quick and you get lazy. I haven't. And you can reduce to a schwa. Yeah, just don't think I do it. People are like, what? What are you saying? gonna understand you. Yeah. No problem. How are you, and why are you supposed to come out in fast speech? Very good question. Very, very good question. There's a couple ways. Of course, how and are will commonly contract to hower. So we get ow plus and there's going to be a small w link between them, hower. But you can get a little lazier and or faster and reduce it to kind of hower. So this is like a this doesn't exist in clearly enunciated speech, but technically you can look at this as like an R-colored. It's not even R. I was gonna say R-colored ow, but it's not even like, it's maybe a partially reduced ow that is R-colored. So it's like this weird blend between ow and hower. How are you? Or with wire. Okay, so that will by default usually contract into with a small y. So it sounds just like W-I-R-E. If you're getting a little more lazy and or especially faster, you can reduce that further and say like wire, which would technically be an R-colored I, which you never have to do. I talked about that in the lesson on the R-colored vowels. You never have to do that, but in faster or lazier speech, it's likely to come out that way. Because you can always say like ire with that small y linking, and it's going to sound perfectly fine. So it's up to you. Even in faster speech, like you can still, like, you don't have to go all the way down to like the hower and wire. You can say like hower, how are you? How are you? See, there's still that little W there. How are you? How are you? It's just like everything is shorter. Or why are you here? Why are you here? And so why are you here? Why are you here? So it will affect like ultimately like the upper limit of how fast you can say that if you don't reduce it all the way down to like hower or wire. But that's like the upper limit of speech. Like you never even have to really get that fast. So it's kind of up to you if you want to use it at that faster speed. You never really have to, unless you want to go super fast. Gotta go fast, right? Sonic. And are R and or reduced to when they're the first word in an utterance? Well, or is almost always reduced to regardless of where it is. Pretty much any word that is spelled OR, if it's not stressed, it will reduce to Like it's a very, very common pattern. For R, it depends, but yes, if it's the first word, it can definitely reduce to Like if I say, are you sure? Are you sure? Now, it can potentially sound a little more informal, which is kind of a tricky thing because it doesn't always sound more informal. But if I say, are you hungry? Are you hungry? You're hungry? And in fact, we can even drop it potentially, like, you hungry? Right? Especially in informal speech. You actually don't have to use those auxiliary question words usually, unless it's important for tense or something. So are possibly, yes, it happens, or definitely. Even if it's at the start. So if I say, now, if or is at the start, which usually it's not, right? If it is, it might be a little more likely that we say or, right? So I say, or do you not want to? Okay, but you could still say, or do you not want to? Or do you not want to? There's nothing wrong with that. Especially in faster speech. Again, it's dynamic. If you're slowing down, if you're speaking a little more clearly, a little more slowly, then you're going to want to say are and or. Okay, so just because it's, regardless of where it is, and just because it usually might reduce, it still also depends on your speed and clarity of how you're speaking. Could you please look up this video, Deliberate English, how to make the a vowel? Feel free to copy it and tell me what the hell is the guy doing with the vowel. All right, let's see. Should I I'll leave the dictionary open. I might need that. YouTube. in you while I look for the. Oh, yeah. Now, because I also don't want to mess up my monetization, I'm gonna have put my headphones on here because otherwise it'll be picked up by my mic probably, and who knows, it might get a copyright strike because YouTube is insane. But let's go ahead and listen here. So you said at 250 to 311. Let's see, 250 to 311. All right, so go a little before. And I want to turn up my volume. Oh God. Well, I can already tell you, as far as the teacher goes. So he says, in order to make the sound, definitely has an accent there. That's not how you do it. That's how he's doing it. I'm not trying to mock him, but like this is what we would do when we notice small differences like this between, which actually I would think this is actually a pretty big difference between certain dialects, and they sort of like stand out and seem weird to us. We'll do that. So I'm not intentionally trying to make fun of him. It's just like I'm trying to play with it the way that he's saying it, and it's just like it sounds and feels so ridiculous. He's also making it like a diphthong. He's not making it a solid He's like He's letting it move, which I think people that are maybe more towards the north a bit, not the North Midwest, but like say like Minnesota and like in that area there, that kind of have this like shifting sound. I'm not 100% sure on that, and I don't know exactly where this guy is from, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's from the north. Yeah, he's saying black, cat. And then he says snack completely differently. He's like snack. Like that actually sounds better. And that's that's 311. So let me go over that really quickly again. Tip of the tongue is forward and touching the bottom teeth. It doesn't have to, but okay. I'm just mimicking him. Black, cat, snack. It's so weird how he just says snack completely differently. Anyway, yeah, so I would, my advice would be to ignore that video. Nothing against that guy, but I would not count the way that he's saying as part of like the normal standard way to say it. I could be a little wrong there because it's an isolation. Maybe if I just heard him speaking normally and he said the sound, maybe it wouldn't stand out too much to me. So it could be within normal variation. It's just the way that he's talking about it and the way that he's producing the sound in isolation and just in words in isolation. It sounds super, super strange to me. Super strange. In fact, let me listen. I could probably tell where he's from if I listen to him talk a little bit more. Drop. So he doesn't have the merger. At least I don't think he has the merger. Maybe he just unmerged at that time. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Talk some more. Let's see. So he's saying, did you play the sax back in high school band? Let me see how he says this normally. Oh my God, play. Why are you not playing? What is wrong with my internet? I think the universe is telling me to move on. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and move on because I don't know what's going on with this. I don't want to wait for this to load. I'm all paranoid about my mic now. You can hear him say the vowel in isolation and then the word black cat snack. By the way, I'm not cheating on English accent. But sometimes I find it helpful to check other teachers out of curiosity. No, absolutely. I don't want blind loyalty to me. I want you guys to check out other channels. Now, obviously, my goal is to be like the one-stop shop that answers all your questions and makes things easier for you. But by no means do I want you to only watch my content, especially because the way that I explain things don't work for some people. I've had students like that. Like I know that different teachers, different ways of explaining things are better for different people. So you might watch my video as stupid, like that doesn't make any sense. I can't do that. And then you go watch Rachel's English, right? And you're like, it makes perfect sense. Thank you, Rachel. Or whatever, vice versa. So definitely go watch other teachers. But anyway, the ah sound is probably like the one sound. It's weird because there's like the cot merger and all these things. I think the ah sound in terms of like the way that people produce it across the country is probably like one of the single, if not the single most common, like the most highly variable vowel of the exact way that it's produced. And that's part of the problem with it, because you guys listen to this teacher and this teacher and this teacher, and then we tell you like 3 different ways to do it. And you're just like, how am I supposed to do this? I don't know. Which is why I try to be aware of that and say, hey, there's actually like a range here. There's slightly different ways that different people do it. And I try to just give you like a short, easy thing that, I mean, it's not easy. You have to still find the sound. That's the hard part. It's a difficult sound if you don't have it. But once you find it, it doesn't have to be so complicated. Like, I try to make it easier for you. But anyway, moving on. Mintrea A, welcome to the chat. I know it's been a while. I'm behind. I am so grateful to be able to see the live broadcast again. Well, yes, thank you for coming back. Thanks always. I learned a lot from your channel. I want to ask about the letter O in the American accent. I know it sounds like the sound of A. Doesn't sound like the sound of A. See, when we say sound of and then you put the letter A, like in English, that means nothing. Is that ah, a, I? Probably not I, but so that's because our spelling system just isn't phonetic. And so like, the best I can understand that is you're saying like O sounds like A, I guess. I don't know. But I noticed that when the letter O comes after letters such as G, N, M, B, D, the O is pronounced like the O, like the word log. Is log a word? log Tom. Can you explain to me, because I'm confused? Okay, so yeah, this is probably the fault of some other teachers, I would assume, with the crazy ways that they teach it. The O is not that complicated. It is not that complicated. O is O. That's it. It's not A. It's not like the A sound. It doesn't have any special changes. It doesn't have any special things. But remember, we're talking about the sound. One of the biggest, most important things that you have to understand, and which is one of the biggest things, I haven't talked about it recently because I haven't been talking about vowel sounds a lot. But if you watch a lot of the lessons in the beginning of the course, you'll see I talk a lot about focus on your ears, not your eyes. Okay. You cannot trust spelling in English. There are some spelling patterns that can be useful, but there's probably an exception to every spelling pattern. Some are very, very consistent, which is good. But especially with the O, when the O is used in spelling, not sound, but in spelling, it is one of the least consistent letter to sound combinations. Okay. We use the O to represent the letter O to represent the sound O. We use it to represent the sound ah. Okay, that might be what you mean with the A sound, ah. I think in the unmerged accents, they use it sometimes to represent aw. I'm not completely sure on that. Yeah, because I think on is supposed to be like that, on. So it's a mess. It's a mess. Okay. Don't focus on the spelling. O is O. If it's the O sound, then it's the O sound. That's the sound it's supposed to be. But just because you see the letter O doesn't mean it's pronounced as an O. Okay. Focus on your ears. So in log, I don't think lod is L-O-D. I don't think that's I know L-O-U-D is a word. I don't think L-O-D is a word. That aside, log and tom, yes, they're spelled with an O, but they're not the O sound. You need to, in English, you need to separate the visual symbols from the sounds, because very often they not match. And I know it sucks and it's confusing, but that's the reality. Okay. So I need you to separate that in your brain. That's the number one first thing that you should do when learning English. Okay. Any dialect of English, it doesn't matter. You need to separate the written language from the spoken language, and you need to focus on the sounds in your speaking, not on the letters. The letters are for writing. Okay. There's certain ways that things are spelled and they don't often match the sound. So I hope that answers your question. So don't worry about what comes after it or all this. Like those are the kind of like minute spelling rules that may or may not exist technically. Like, okay, yeah, well, usually if there's like a G or an N or an M after it, then it's probably going to be pronounced this way. And it's like, don't even worry about all that. It's a waste of your time, because even if you memorize all those rules, that doesn't help your ears. Okay, so it's not going to help your listening, and that doesn't help your mouth, right? Like you're going to sit there, you're going to be speaking to somebody. Oh, okay. So, yeah, so I was talking to, is it Tom or Tom? Forget. Well, there's an M after it. So guess, oh yeah, that's right. It has to be Tom. So, okay. No, you're associating the O letter with multiple sounds, and you don't even have to do that. Separate out the letter from the sounds, focus on the sounds, and just learn by ear. Okay. Focus on your ear. Spelling is secondary. So please let me know if that makes sense, and if you have any other questions, because this is a very, very big important point. Don't worry about all the little tiny rules, because they're not really going to help you, and best case scenario, they're just going to be a waste of your time. Focus on your ears instead. Wendell, what do you mean by lazy? I would write AH, not lazy A, but yeah. Have is reduced with to schwa or to the sound. Oh, okay. So the lazy is a sound that I've talked about a couple times. It's actually, I don't know if you've seen my lesson. It's like the truth. I think it's one of the most recent lessons, the truth about before N and M. And I introduced this idea of the lazy because that's part of it. But it doesn't have to be before N or M. The lazy is used all the time, pretty much. The reason I call it lazy is because if I fully enunciate that sound, you open the mouth more, okay? There's a certain tenseness and shape to the tongue. We say have, can, sat, right? Whatever. Now, the lazy version is more closed. It's going to be about the same height as okay? So but I'm shifting a little bit into the tenseness and shape of just not as open. And so it's a lot more closed. Technically speaking, yes, there is a little bit of a difference in the exact way that the sound sounds, because it's not as open. But it sounds, at least to English speakers, exactly like a fully enunciated It's just not as clear. It's a little more closed, and we usually use it in faster speech. If I clearly enunciate, if I say it's a cat, I'm probably going to open it a lot. But if I'm normal speech, I'm just going to say it's cat, not cat. It's a cat. Okay, makes it so much easier, right? Now you should still be able to do the fully enunciated sound, and that's also partially how you're going to find that right shape and tension in the tongue, is through that fully enunciated sound. So you don't want to skip that. You want to still be able to do that, but in the flow of real speech, a lot of the time you can use the lazier version of that, right? And not open as much. I think the most common default thing that would happen with have is that we go to the lazy instead of clearly saying have, right? Have you seen it? Have you seen it? Have you seen it? Now, if we get really lazy, as I was saying, maybe you can reduce to a little bit. Like, have you seen it? Have you seen it? That's like really lazy. You could do Now that has nothing to do with the lazy ah. I'm just saying we're getting even lazier and not even going down far enough or getting that shape right for ah. We're just letting it be eh. So it's super lazy. But it's a different sound now. It's eh. It's lazy for the pronunciation of this word. It has nothing to do with the ah sound. And then reducing it to a schwa, that's where I said like it shouldn't really be that way. Maybe in really fast speech, like have you done it? Have you done it? Have you done it? Have you done it? And we were talking about earlier, like I think Finn asked, was it like I haven't, whatever, like I haven't. Yes, it's why in really fast speech possibility. But again, with the speed, if you say have you seen it? No. It's not right. You don't want to reduce it there. So I hope that answers that. Gabriel, can I use the word schmoozing to talk about small talk? Credit Cambridge Dictionary has a negative meaning. Yeah, we shades of gray. It often does have an underlying negative connotation because we think of the people who are most likely to schmooze or to even, I don't know if they would actually use the word, but the people that we would describe as schmoozing tend to be like very, very rich people at parties. So they're, socializing, small talk, like, oh, hey, yes, how are you? How's your family? Whatever. But they're like really rich people. And, like a lot of people don't like rich people. And so like we say, oh, they're schmoozing, right? So you might see a movie where, say there's like a poor person who, through the plot of the movie, now they're in this rich situation and they don't really know how to act. And they say, well, I guess I'll go schmooze, or something. Like I'll go be rich and have small talk with rich people, because now I'm at this party. So it's, yeah, I wouldn't use it. It's definitely not a word that I use in my everyday vocabulary. Actually, I probably don't use it at all myself. But it does refer to essentially small talk. Yes. But as soon as I hear that word, I think at a party, like at a fancy rich party. Doesn't have to be, but that's where my mind always goes. So that's going to be the most common context. I would ignore the word, really, like understand it, but I wouldn't ever use it. So it's your choice. Delio, I've noticed that when many Americans say, yeah, this problem, say the word egg, it kind of sounds like egg, even when their accent is otherwise pretty neutral. So I'm curious as to how you pronounce it. I pronounce it both ways. This is, I don't know if it's officially under free variation, like route and root, or data and data, or data and data, data and data. Two ways to say the same thing. It doesn't matter. In the way that I particularly speak, I use both. I don't know, like West Coast people particularly use one and other people particularly use another. Either way, it's going to sound pretty neutral. It doesn't really matter. Now for you, based on what you're used to, it might kind of stand out a little bit. This is one of the things that can stand out a little bit more. But if I'm speaking just normal speed and I say, oh, did you get the eggs? Did you get the eggs? Did you get the eggs? Okay. Or I say, did you get the eggs? 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 See, if I switch between and a in that normal speed or even fast speed, you can't even really tell the difference. Like maybe if you're listening really close to that particular thing, it'll kind of stand out. So it's probably like, oh, did you get the eggs? Or do you want some eggs? Okay, that's when you're probably going to notice the difference more, when it's a little more enunciated. So it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter. They're both, I would say, under the neutral spectrum. But yes, I use both. Whenever one comes out, oh, my leg hurts. My leg hurts. Leg hurts. Leg hurts. Doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Delio, that's a Seattle thing, I'm pretty sure. Well, I'm not from Seattle. Anyway, yeah, there are lots of speakers who will use one or the other. I don't know where they're from, as I said, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Where am I in the chat? Stop moving my chat, YouTube. What time is it? Well, it's already been over an hour. Look at that. And I have nothing to drink. I'm so sad. Can there be reduced in there are some people? Yes. Well, not the word there itself. I answered that. There are can be reduced to there're, contracted. There, I don't know how we would reduce it. There. Yeah, okay. I get if you're being really lazy and speaking quickly, I guess you can kind of reduce the air to like there. But if R is after it, you say like there, and I was like and it really doesn't sound clear. I wouldn't recommend that. You might hear that from some people if they're being really lazy and just speaking really unclearly, but I don't think that's standard. Now, if R is not after it, and I say like if I say like he lives there, right? He lives there. He lives there. He lives there. You don't actually have to say like air. You can kind of say more like maybe not a complete like a partial, like a little bit of the part. And again, in faster speech, change it. And so it says on my end, hopefully we're fine. It's interesting. You seem to be saying egg for egg isn't natural. I've been hearing more people say egg than egg. See, as I said, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And I was surprised by it at first, but now it sounds common to me. Just the other day, I heard a native speaker pronounce leg as leg. Exactly. Yeah. I do it all the time. I do both. I've never noticed that. Do you know what state they're from, or is it not an accent? I have no idea. I know that's not a question for me, but I have no idea. So now we got, okay, now I'm reading the chat instead of answering the chat. I think I've heard it from people who aren't from Seattle too, but you might be right. Yeah, it might be a West Coast thing to change it to A. I don't know. That might be a fair assumption, but I wouldn't say, oh, only people in Seattle say this. Like that's like way too narrow. It's definitely not a regional thing. Like that small of a region, at least. Yes, the classic. I don't have an accent. I guess probably for like the like accent. I don't have an accent. Accent. Yeah, that sounds like from the north. Yeah. Anyway, I'm pretty sure I've heard leg pronounced as leg too. It's actually how I pronounce those two words, and it's kind of subconscious. Yeah, exactly. See, no problem. Do it however you want. You flapped the D and produced. Yes, I did. What's wrong with that? Oh, because it's stressed. Yeah, so the thing about the flap D, this is something that I've been noticing more and more. The standard is if it's at the start of an unstressed syllable and surrounded by two vowels, definitely flap it. But how do we speak faster? Think about that. How do we speak faster? Because the flap D is technically a slightly faster, slightly lazier, slightly less clear version of a weak full contact D, right? It just so happens that it triggers when it's surrounded by two vowels at the start of an unstressed syllable. So it's like, that's why I call it the second weak D, because it needs a certain condition to trigger. But even if you have a, now at the start of a word, this can be really, really tricky, especially if it's the first word. We don't flap out of nowhere. So definitely it wouldn't happen there. If it's at the start of a word in the flow of, start of a word, if it's at the start of the word and that start is a stress syllable and it's in the flow of a sentence, maybe this could also apply. But I've noticed that especially inside words where it's still surrounded by two vowels, but it's a strong D because it's at the start of a stress syllable, it's not supposed to flap. The way that we can speak faster, which this doesn't have to necessarily be super fast speed, but the way that we can speak a little bit faster is to go ahead and just flap the D anyway and use the voice to not the voice, the like the force for the stress. So produce. Usually it's going to gravitate more towards D, because in order for us to get that force out, we like to have that solid contact, where when we don't have as much force, it's easier to kind of just tap and go into the next one, because it's supposed to be at the start of an unstressed syllable. So we're kind of coming down out of the stress from whatever was before it. But it can happen for the stressed one in the middle of a word. I've noticed that. It's just, I don't think it's the normal default thing that happens, but it can happen. So I wouldn't try to reproduce that. Just, you noticed it, great. It exists, and don't worry about it. Hey, I don't think this is necessarily a regional thing, because I've heard people from Midwest, California, Hawaii, and even Canada. See, Dave into the rescue. Exactly. See, this is my point. It doesn't matter. It's interesting. I didn't hear it before because my ears always filtered the A pronunciation and I perceived it as but now I can't. Or because my ears always filtered the A pronunciation and I perceived it as but now I can't unhear just how many natives do the A. Exactly. And see, this is another thing where, because I think the way that they say is like the neutral or standard pronunciation is supposed to be before g, right? And so that's what you're told by most teachers. And then all of a sudden you start hearing some people say a before g. Huh? What's up with that? Is that a regional thing? No, actually, there's a lot of people from different parts of the country that do that. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that everything is like that, but this is one of those points where, like I'm telling you guys, pick one. In this particular case, if it's plus g, like egg, leg, beg, you can say a if it's easier for you or if you want to. As long as it still sounds good, it sounds like a, then you're fine. Or if you want to say because you like how it sounds, do that. They both sound neutral. They both sound fine. You just pick one. Where most teachers will probably say like, oh, it's supposed to be this way. It's like, no, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. After this live, I'm going to watch a bunch of videos about legs and eggs so I can notice it. That has to be one of the strangest sentences I've ever seen. It really does. But okay, yeah. That's how you do it. Target it, right? Target it. And again, the ears, I tell you guys to train your ears. David even said, right? Like the brain was filtering it. So whenever the A pronunciation was said, it was perceived as right? But after enough input and noticing it, it's like, oh, now I hear it all the time, right? Because it is being used all the time. When you don't train your ears, or you don't try to notice these subtle details that might help to open your ears, then your brain will just compensate. And you actually won't hear what people are saying, like the exact sounds they're using, which isn't the biggest deal in the world. But like for something like this, it's a very small detail and it doesn't matter. But when it comes to actually like hearing the difference between and right, or e and which we know are big problems, then yes, it's a very big thing. So unmerged, the short O, oh God, I hate that term so much. Is an unmerged A, whatever that's supposed to be. On can be pronounced both on or an. I don't know. I don't know what this is supposed to mean. See, this is what either the IPA or my transcription, because A space N, like I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Like an, like I don't know. Maybe that's a typo. But one of the two, because I'll even though I don't like the IPA, if you use the IPA, I'll know exactly what you're trying to say. I just prefer my method, and I think it's easier for you guys to use. And the other unmerged vowel is usually used in words like, or used with and ah. Yeah, two ways to spell ah, same thing. The unmerged short O. So there is no, like, there's no merged or unmerged short O. See, this is like, I don't know if this is like terminology that you got from someone else, or if this is like your way of explaining it. But like, that doesn't make any sense. There is no merged or unmerged O. There's not even really like a long or short O. There's just O. Definitely no merger with the O. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Unmerged, the short O is an unmerged ah. So I guess you're trying to say like the short O would be like ah, which definitely is not right. I guess maybe like the spelling, like say hot would be hot or something like that. I think hot is one of the words that use the one up here instead of the backwards C. I have the dictionary here. See, I knew I was going to need. Yeah. or something like that. It uses a symbol that's similar. That's definitely not the backward C. So see, if we're basing off like spelling, and then okay, if it's spelled with this, and like that's the short O, and then see, now it just gets all mixed up because you're associating the spelling like in hot, which this is just what I'm getting from what you wrote here. Maybe I'm completely off base, but say this is the word hot, and then people say, okay, so this is right? The unmerged and then they call it the short O in that case. It's like, no, it's not even an O sound. See, your brain is all mixed up, and it's not even an O anymore. It's not. It's just written with an O. So you can't call it an O just because it's written with that letter, especially in a language like English. Now, if it were a phonetic language, if it were phonetically spelt, like say Spanish, then you could say, yeah, la O se pronuncia así, right? The O is pronounced like this. And if they had a short O and a long O, then that would be fine, whatever. But when you see an O in Spanish, it's O. There's nothing else for it to be. It's O. And maybe you can get some diphthongs or whatever, but there's an O there, right? Where in English, when you see an O, there's a good chance that it's not an O. Very good chance it's not an O, actually. Unless it's OA or O with a silent E, those are common spelling patterns for the actual O sound, but the O by itself is almost never an O. And so I don't want you to think of it as an O, short or long or whatever, because it's not. It's factually incorrect. It doesn't match the sounds in any way. So maybe I'm off base and just rambling about whatever, but either way, see, Finn, the fact that, again, I don't know if this is your way of explaining it or if this is how like you've seen other teachers explain it, but just based off that explanation, number one, not saying that, I'm just saying like, this is such a complicated way to that me as a teacher, I'm not even completely sure if I understand what you're saying. And number two, provided that I do understand what you're saying, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I think this is an absolute horrible way to conceptualize it. So anyway, it's just my job here is to make things simpler. And this is not simple at all. So you do that, but oh yeah, the egg thing. By the way, not the same case, but there's a YouTuber called The Quartering. Yes, I've heard of him, and he consistently turns a into a. Oh yeah, you mentioned him before. I already heard about him before that, but I think on Patreon you mentioned him once. Into a in words like bag, flag, and dragon. English is weird. Yeah, that is a weird one. That's one that I would definitely say is not standard, because changing a into a, with the exception, like if it's ng, like obviously that's a common variation that, or bank, right? Some people might say bang or bank, but to me that sounds quite British. Some Americans use it. But when it's a G before it, maybe this is something that for some people in some places is starting to change because, I mean, there's no g in bang, but there's kind of, in a way, that it's like there and it's written in the spelling. And so like there could be this in some places, some people are starting to say like bag, flag, dragon. And I would say it's a regional thing. It's not a standard thing. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But it definitely does sound like an accent to me, for sure. And he might otherwise see, sometimes things just don't come out right. He might otherwise sound pretty neutral. And I don't know where he's from. That actually seems like it might be a Canadian thing or like a northern thing, possibly. So could be that. Exactly. It's so ingrained in my brain right now. I can't hear it either, by the way. That's exactly what I was going to say in my next message. They beat me to it. Yeah. Ali, last time I had a question about would have plus past tenses. Yes. I don't remember what that question was. Can you restate the question? Oh yeah, that's right. Because I remember you got here towards the end and I said to bring your question next time. So I don't remember specifically what that question was. Thank you for mentioning it again. If you can restate that question, then I'll definitely get to it. I'll make sure to get to it today, no matter what. That's so cool that we have the exact same thought. Okay, so a question for me. Do you know the movie Airplane? from the 1980s. I think I've heard of it, but I definitely haven't seen it. Big surprise, right? If you're familiar with it, can you, as a native speaker, actually understand what the guys speaking jive say? Because I'm lost without subs. Well, I could do a quick search. Let's go. YouTube. What was it called? Airplane? The airplane? Airplane. Okay. Airplane. Jive. Let's see. I speak jive. Airplane. What's the jive part? Oh, probably that part. I see. Okay, let's see. Can I get you something? I speak jive. Oh, God, it's so hilarious watching that old white lady say that. Yeah, interesting. So, yeah, I can generally understand what they're saying. I'm able to pick up a lot of it, but some of it I'm just like, what did you say? Probably because I'm white. I don't know. Which can sound very racist, but if in any way, I don't mean it in a negative way. Like I'm, the uncool white guy. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, English edit again. Sometimes you love it and hate it. I know, right? I'm glad I'm a native speaker. I definitely have a love-hate relationship with this language, or should I say, language? How else? Oh, would you pronounce it language? Because that is, I don't like it. I say language. I remember once you talked about not pronouncing the N in can't and making a stop K before words that start with K or G sounds. That's why you're one of the few native speakers I trust with phonetics. Once I asked a teacher who was native, and he said that I don't get it. I don't get it had to be pronounced with N and a stop T into G. Oh, okay. I see what you're talking about. See, examples help because I'm just like sounds and words and what are we talking about? Yeah. So not pronouncing the N in can't, making a stop K before. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Most teachers will tell you that because again, they're teaching you, number one, they usually want you to enunciate. Like they want you to enunciate everything super clearly because the number one goal is communication, right? That's what you're learning the language for, is to communicate, like maybe unless you're learning ancient Greek or ancient, like Latin or something that nobody speaks anymore. And you just have the interest in the language, right? Usually we learn a language to communicate or to, understand, maybe like watching anime or something, whatever it is. And so, the clearly enunciated version of thing, like I can say, I don't get it. Even then I wouldn't even be able to flap it. I have to say, I don't get it. We will skip that. Like I don't get it. That would be like fully enunciated of everything. I don't get it. And so they give some leeway because that just starts to sound really unnatural. And so they say, okay, well, yeah, we'll flap the, you can stop it. I don't get it. Or get it. And so get some of the linking in, they'll get, because otherwise it just sounds way too unnatural. But then there's other aspects of it, other things that can happen, especially in faster speech, that they don't even talk about because, number one, it's a lot harder to teach, honestly. And it does make things more complicated because it's like, oh, now there's this range between enunciated and fast. Go against what I say when I'm trying to make things simpler for you guys. And in many ways I am, but I don't want to deny that reality. I want to tell you guys, this is how real speech actually is, not just give you this sort of surface level, oh, this is how you're supposed to properly speak. Like, no, it's no. So in many ways, I think a lot of teachers teach you guys not a completely false version of the language in terms of pronunciation, but a not completely truthful, not completely like not wholly accurate version of how to pronounce the language. And that's part of what I want to address is even if it makes things a little more complicated in some ways, I want to give you guys that information because some of you want to sound like natives. And how do you do that? You got to know how natives speak, right? And we don't just speak in this nice, way that many teachers teach you guys. So I use the term "o" because I was explaining spelling. Yeah, see, I got that later. At first, I didn't even get that. I was really confused. On have one sound and "o" has another sound. I said that so if you don't have the merger, you would know how to pronounce it. That doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, spelling doesn't consist at all in English. I was trying to explain the sort of pattern that happens in the spelling of the unmerged vowels, but yeah, just have the merger makes things a lot easier. Exactly. Yes, I see what you were trying to do. It makes sense, but it just came out really complicated. So no need to make it so complicated. But interesting. Anyway, moving on. The quartering guy is born and bred Wisconsinite. That makes sense. That makes sense. A lot of people from Wisconsin, I mean, I don't know like everybody from Wisconsin, but the people I've heard that say they're from Wisconsin, quite a few of them sound perfectly neutral to me, but especially if they're more from like not from the cities, or maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'm really not that familiar, but I have heard some Wisconsins with like a bit of an accent, like they say some words a little bit different, and I've heard some that I haven't really noticed much of a difference. So, again, that's another reason why I say like most Americans sound neutral, like regardless of where they're from. Like if you're from like the countryside of a particular, state, you might have a bit of a different accent than somebody from the city. And maybe the people from the city have that more neutral sound. And of course there's more people in the city, which means, again, most people sound neutral. So that's how it can sort of be like spread out around the country, even if, there's little differences. But see, it makes perfect sense to me. Ali, okay. In Ontario, some people use would have there instead would have gone. And what's the question? Like, is that grammatically correct? Because I really don't remember. I just remember it had something to do with this type of question. I don't remember what the exact question was from last time. Oh, yes, that's right. Okay, no, hold on. I got it. Never mind. The reason why I got confused there for a second is because the wrong answer sounds perfectly fine. I was like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, what's the question? Yeah, so what is correct is would have gone, right? That's what you were taught. And that's definitely correct. Would have gone. Would have went. So remember, see, this is perfect proof. This is absolute perfect proof of what I say when what I mean when I say grammar is like there's certain grammar points. Grammar is always very slowly in transition over time, very, very slowly. And there's this point that is a certain points at a certain so some things will just start changing and they're very early formal or it sounds like slang, and then in 200 years it'll just be the normal way to speak, right? This is a good example of how this works with irregular verbs, because I've talked a little bit about irregular verbs before with this issue, like say swim, swam, swum. I'm pretty sure it's swim, swam, swum. Most people will say Like, oh, I haven't swam in years. And let me actually double check the dictionary because I'm not 100% sure here. Always have to double check this one. Yeah, swim, swam, swum. So swum is supposed to be that third form, like I have swum. It sounds wrong, even though it's correct. It sounds wrong. Not completely wrong, but so swim is an example where swum is very much in the process of replacing that third form, right? And we know that we have some irregular verbs where like the present version is one, the past version is a different one, and then the third version with like have done will be the same as the past, right? The simple past. And in the past in time in English, that wasn't true. There was like 3 different forms. But over time, like I think, for example, like talked, right? So I talked today, yesterday, I have talked for a long time. I don't know when, but it's very likely that at some point in the past, it was talked, and I don't know, talkin' or something like that. I have talkin'. But now it's not. Now we just have the 2 forms, right? And there are some verbs like hurt, right? H-U-R-T, like, ow, my hand, I hurt my hand, right? Present tense, I just right now hurt my hand. Ouch. Or, well, I guess it's still past tense. See it? Well, no, okay, present tense. I hurt my hand yesterday, or I have hurt my hand many times. It doesn't change, okay? So that used to probably be 3 forms, and now it's just 1 form, you know, for all versions. When we're talking about go, okay, go is one of the most irregular verbs that there is. And I think what's happening with go is it's probably midway in that transition for that third form gone. Gone still sounds perfectly fine to me. 100% perfectly fine. Like that's correct. There's nothing wrong with it. But if I hear somebody say like, oh, I would have went there if I had time, it doesn't sound in any way wrong to me. It's wrong grammatically, but it doesn't sound wrong even a little bit. It sounds perfectly 100% correct to me, to my ears. And so this particular grammar point of if we should say have gone or have went, I think what we're witnessing, what we're seeing here is that we are halfway, directly halfway in the transition of gone disappearing, probably in another 100 to 200 years or so. Gone will not even be a word, at least with have, right? Because it could be used elsewhere, like it is gone. If you say it is went, that sounds bad, right? So we'll use it for like it is gone, but I have gone 200 years from now will probably just be I have went. I can almost guarantee that. So perfect example. So my recommendation to you, there are going to be some people, especially the grammar police, who will say, oh, that's wrong. And maybe to some people, saying have went doesn't sound good. It's possible. But to me, as a native, it sounds perfectly fine. I would just not care. If it were me, I would not care. I would just use have went like all the time. But if you want to use have gone all the time, to cover all situations and like, never sound wrong to anybody, you could choose that as well. So just ignore have went. But if you want to use have went, go ahead. You probably won't hear any other teacher tell you that. So yes, it's something that's changing. That's the answer. Delio, what does just sound like in super fast speech? Is it just, or maybe none of them? I feel like the tongue doesn't touch the hard palate. Good question. So, well, we have a couple things here. First, remember, ST at the end of a word. The T will usually disappear. It doesn't have to, but it will very commonly disappear. So you are correct. It doesn't even have to come all the way up to the T. Okay, you just stop at the S. As for the exact sounds, so the first sound is J, obviously. And it's supposed to be an S. It's not a Z. Now, depending on what's after it, maybe you can kind of turn it into a Z. Like if you say, I don't know, I just got here. You say, I just got here. Just got here. In faster speeds, like I just got, because then the G the G is voiced. Maybe it can kind of turn into a Z. There should probably still be a little bit of an S and then the Z, but fast speech causes weird things, okay? But if it's not fast speech, if it's kind of like normal speed or especially enunciated speech, no Z, it's an S. So like I just got here, okay? With the vowel, which doesn't seem to be your question, which I was surprised about. You're asking about sort of that ending part. The vowel is supposed to be that is correct. The schwa, right? This isn't the true schwa, this is the untrue stress schwa. But, and just actually doesn't have to be stressed, so it doesn't have to be stressed, but it's the untrue schwa. So that's just, okay. Now, one interesting thing that I've noticed is even in normal speech, it's not a speed thing, but it probably happens even more in faster speech. You can actually, instead of using you can use the HisHer, like the sound in book. So you can say just, I just got here. Just. Now, if you clearly enunciate like I just got here, it sounds a little bit weird. So you want to go back into but you can think of it as sort of almost sort of like a weird reduction, because is not supposed to be a reduction sound, but there are some weird little cases where it can actually be a reduction. So there's actually two vowels that you can use there, unless you're clearly enunciating. It should be yeah. So good. Finn, you're not an uncool white guy, Josh. You're very cool. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, I don't know about I mean, I'm definitely a white guy, but I don't know about the cool part. So the best is not using the schwa, but that lazy in cat in the word have in have you been to Africa? Absolutely, yes. Again, there's no one right answer here. I would say that a good medium that will cover most cases, right? Things can happen. As I said, you can reduce have maybe to if you're being really lazy and fast. It's okay. But obviously we don't clearly open all the way. So this, and then again, the schwa I would say maybe for like really fast speech. Even then, maybe. So using this lazy is sort of like a nice way where you can kind of reduce the sound to what still sounds like it's just not as clearly enunciated. And I think that's probably what we hit most of the time is that lazy so even though other things can happen, and there's not just one answer here, I would recommend that lazy as in cat for have here. With the one exception being if for whatever reason you clearly enunciate that or you emphasize it, like, well, have you been to Africa? Then we're probably going to open it more just naturally, right? So it's dynamic. Normally lazy notice also same thing in Africa. So Africa, it's a stress syllable, but we can still do the lazy It doesn't depend on the stress. If it's unstressed, it's more likely that we're going to use the lazy But if I'm speaking, pretty quickly, Africa, Africa, Africa. I don't have to say Africa, Africa, Africa. Perfectly fine. Just use the lazy It allows us to speak faster and more easily. So the lazy covers like pretty much any time that you're going to say the sound, regardless of what's after it or if it's stressed or unstressed. You can always use the lazy The one exception to that, again, would be if you're giving extra special emphasis. So not just normal stress, but if you say Africa, okay, now you're going to open it more. That's just a natural, it's not a rule that says, oh, it's more stress, so you open more. No, it's a natural result of how the English language works, because if you give special emphasis to it and make it extra loud and extra long compared to how it normally is, even if it's stressed, then we are naturally going to open more. We're naturally going to push more force out. And so that's how you want to think of it, not as like some rule or anything. It's just a consequence of how we're speaking, how we're saying the words. Hope you don't find this annoying, but I have one last video. So annoyed. so very annoyed. I'm just going to ignore this one. No. Voa learning English, how to pronounce relaxed sound. Okay. 26 to 32. Oh my God, YouTube. Let's see what they say. It's 26. All right, let's see. Is this guy? I can't quite tell. He has a subtle accent. I want to say maybe Canadian, possibly like Irish or Scottish with a very light Irish or Scottish accent. I'm really not sure. But the way he says is, I mean, it sounds like I'm not going to say it's not It actually sounds a lot closer to the lazy but it doesn't sound exactly right. Kind of like how the British to me still sounds like an It's just, it doesn't sound like an English Just want to see if you agree that this teacher is saying the vowel a bit weird as well. Yes. But I was listening to him speak a bit, and just like through his speech, I kind of say Canadian, but I'm picking up hints of maybe Scottish or Irish, like very subtle Scottish or Irish in there as well. Like it's really breathy, and I definitely don't hear him using a glottal stop before his well, I don't know about that part, but anyway, it wouldn't be me if I didn't have a couple completely random and unrelated words. Yes, of course, that I'm unsure how to pronounce. It has multiple pronunciations. I say nougat, nougat. So it's an I in that second syllable, unstressed, nougat. I think some people say nougat or something like that. So yeah, that's just how I say it, nougat. Not nugget, because that would be Nugget. So it'd be a different word. Mustache. Sometimes we jokingly say moustache or mustachio. Maybe there are some people who actually seriously pronounce it moustache. I don't know, but I can't think of a different way to say that word. So I'm not sure why this is on this list. It's just mustache with a mustache. Entourage. Again, I also don't know how else you would pronounce that word. Resource. Don't know how else you would pronounce that word. Oh, resource. Yeah. What's the deal with that? Natural resources. Yeah, I think it's one of those words where it kind of doesn't matter. We kind of just, whichever one comes out. Some people are more likely to use one than the other. Obviously, I'm much more likely to use resource, but some people will use resource. It doesn't matter. Resourceful. Here, I would say resourceful. So I would actually use the other pronunciation instead of saying resourceful. Resourceful sounds kind of strange to me. So maybe there's a different way. I don't know, but whatever. There's variation. But yeah, for mustache and entourage, I have no idea how somebody else would say that differently in a serious way. Same thing happens with lie, lay, and lane. Everyone just uses the verb to lay instead. Lay. Yeah, exactly. That's one that's kind of just like merging into like one thing. Yeah, of course there's the lay and lie, right? And how they have like the different past tense or the second and third version of them, and those two verbs are kind of collapsing into one, just in general. So that's a whole big mess that is finally slowly sorting itself out. I had lain on the floor is grammatically right, but sounds really weird. To me, it doesn't sound weird. It just sounds, it sounds like it's like if you were watching Game of Thrones or something, right? Where it's like castles and like historical. It sounds like historical. Like, I had lain on the floor. I had lain on the floor. Yeah. Americans would just say, I laid on the floor. Maybe the had if we need to make it clear, but probably we would even drop that too. Just say, I laid on the floor. I laid on the floor. Are you a Britney Spears stan? Me? I assume you're asking David. Which I don't know where that's coming from. Maybe it's, it can't be from the words. I don't know. Well, if you're asking me, no. Like, I don't really care about Britney Spears. I mean, I like some of her music. Funny and somewhat embarrassing story, seeing how I am a male, not a female. But I don't really care. The very first thing that I ever bought with my own money when I was 10 years old was a Britney Spears CD. So, yeah. I liked her music in the 90s, the early 2000s. After that, I kind of stopped listening to her. But yeah, it was her, I think it was the second album. Oops, I did it again. I think that was the second one. But anyway, I'm not like obsessed with any celebrities for the most part, but one exception I'll make. Yeah. Much more comfortable to ask, have you? Exactly. Why it exists. Katsuo, welcome to the chat. I don't think I've seen you. Maybe you've been here before and I don't remember. But I'm sorry it took me a second to get to you here because I'm always behind. How can I improve my diction in English? I can't speak with flow, even though I study phonetics a lot. My pronunciation won't get good. Okay. Very good question. And unfortunately, there is not a single short answer here. This is a very big, complicated process, which a lot of my channel is dedicated to. I still need to make more technique videos and stuff. I have a lot of videos about the basic sounds and how to pronounce them properly. But here you're talking about the flow, right? Now, here's one thing, because you say, even though I study phonetics a lot, okay? Knowledge is not skill. Knowledge is not skill. Knowledge is not skill. I will say that a million times. Knowledge is not skill. So just because you know a lot about phonetics doesn't mean that it's going to help you at all. Okay, because what we're doing when you're trying to, even if you're not trying to sound like a native, you're just trying to sound better and like have a better flow and, just be understood more. It's something that you have to physically, mechanically practice with your mouth. And of course, there's some sounds, especially I assume you're probably a Japanese speaker, unless that's just a username and you like Japanese culture. But I know Japanese has like the fewest sounds of any language, relatively speaking. But regardless, for any new language, there's usually some sounds that you're literally not hearing, and you have to train your ears like between e and I and a, and that's part of the process too. But especially when it comes to producing the sounds, to having the words like just come, roll off your tongue with like the right intonation, the right stress pattern, the right linking, all this stuff. It's something that you have to actually go in and practice mechanically. Just knowing it is not going to do anything for you. Okay. Now, knowing it can be kind of useful because you have the theoretical knowledge, but if you don't actually apply that theoretical knowledge through lots and lots of practice of, making little adjustments with your tongue and doing shadowing work and, noticing the way that natives speak and link things and all this stuff, if you don't do all that, then you're not going to get anywhere. It's a skill. Okay. Knowledge is not skill. That aside, I've worked with quite a few advanced, upper intermediate to advanced level students working on their flow. And I've actually developed several techniques. I'm going to be making some videos about some of those techniques, including, I'll tell you right now here. Number one, the biggest, best technique overall that I recommend to anybody and everybody, hands down. You don't have to use it, and there's more than one way to do it, but it would be shadowing, which the basic idea is you don't want to just repeat what somebody is saying. You want to try to repeat what they're saying exactly the same, right? The stress is the same. The intonation is the same. The speed is the same. The sounds are the same. Okay. The linking is the same. So not just like copying the words that they're saying, matching it perfectly. okay, as close as you can. That's one super, super big useful practice. And as I said, there's different ways that you can go about doing that. You can just focus on the sounds. You can just focus on the flow and the rhythm of it. In your case, you might want to just focus on the flow if your sounds are pretty good. Have developed a couple techniques, and we have, says I have an internet connection again. Hopefully my mic is still working good. One is, I think about this last week or the week before. It's a self-accent hack. This is something I developed, self-accent hack. And this is indirect in terms of flow, but it will still help. In a nutshell, the self-accent hack is where you want to get recordings of yourself speaking naturally. So you're not trying to like speak into it for pronunciation. You want to be talking to somebody. Maybe it could be over Skype. It could be, you know, a work call or with a language partner or whatever it is. If you don't have anybody to speak to, you can try to just like look for table topics and then just record yourself trying to like talk about a random topic. But not focusing on your pronunciation. Okay, it's very important that when you're recording yourself for this, you're just focused on the communicating and how you normally speak now. Okay, then you're going to take that. You can put several clips together if you want. It's audio only. It doesn't matter about the video. But you can put several clips together until you get at least 5 minutes, but I would prefer 10 minutes of yourself speaking. Okay, and then you are going to listen to this as much as you can over the next, say, 1 to 2 weeks. But do not try to analyze your pronunciation. Do not try to analyze your grammar. Do not try to analyze anything. Okay, that's not the purpose here. And you might think, well, then why the heck am I doing this? It's because, and I've tried this with several students, and it works. It works really, really well. Some people don't like it. If you try it and you don't like it, it's fine. But it does work. It works a lot. It's very useful. The theory that I had come up with before I tested it was that, right, we know that language learning is a lot about input. And so, you know, generally how English is supposed to sound, right? You listen to native speakers. Maybe, you know, you don't notice every little detail. Maybe there's some sounds that you don't quite hear, whatever, but you have a general idea of kind of like, okay, oh, so English kind of sounds like this, right? It probably doesn't sound exactly like your language. And so your brain has like a reference for that. And then when you go and try to say that, you might think you're doing a good job. And if you actually record yourself and listen to yourself, you're actually not doing a great job. Or you might be very aware that you're not doing a good job. And you're just like, how do I improve that? Okay. And again, there's numerous techniques you can use. But this technique here, what it does is it gives you a reference. It gives you input of your own pronunciation for your own speaking patterns so that your brain then has a reference for where you are now. Because when you're speaking normally, your brain is using all its resources to communicate the message and maybe some of the grammar. And it doesn't have the time or the resources to focus a lot on the pronunciation, because pronunciation is generally not improved in conversation. There's a role for conversation, but it's mostly improved outside of conversation. And so having that reference for how you sound by sort of getting lots of input of your own accent, your own speaking through the self-accent hack, it is then, the theory is that it is then going to help you to more easily, more efficiently notice things that are wrong, that don't match with how natives actually speak, and to be able to fix them relatively more easily and faster. And I have several students who have done this. Some of them, I think 1 or 2 of them didn't like it. One of them used it to very good effect. It has helped him so much. So it's not something that you have to do, but I recommend you try that. Okay. I'm going to be making a lesson for that. I think actually I already have it recorded. I just haven't edited it yet. Another thing would be extensive shadowing, which is where you don't really worry about the sounds at all. You want to find some sort of, I'll write that, extensive shadowing. I just combined the idea of extensive activity with shadowing. There's intensive and extensive. We don't have to worry about that right now, but like intensive and extensive reading, if you're familiar with that. But extensive shadowing, you're not worried too much about like every little sound. some sort of audio source. It could be a podcast or an interview or whatever it is, preferably with the text. And you're focusing a lot on like the higher level details, like the flow, the rhythm, some of the linking. And you're going to pay very, very, very close attention to just a paragraph. That's it. You don't want to do the whole podcast, the whole thing, just a paragraph. Okay. You want a very concentrated thing. You're going to work with that for at least 2 or 3 days. Okay. Say at least 15 to 20 minutes, preferably maybe 30 minutes a day, 2 to 3 times a day. You just work with that same paragraph. Every time you go back, try to notice more details, try to match more little things. Okay. And you're going to be surprised at how much you didn't notice before. And again, you're working on the flow and the rhythm, some of the linking. So if your sounds are a little bit off, that's okay for this exercise. Intensive shadowing, which is like normal shadowing, is best for sounds as well as other things, but really the sounds are a big focus there. So you can do that as well. There's some other things that I'm kind of trying to develop with some students I'm working with now. And I have a technique, but let's just say it's too early for me to explain because I'm not even sure how to explain it yet. But it's a technique that I've been developing. And you need a native speaker for this particular technique. I'm not really going to talk about. You would need a native speaker who has extremely good ears, like I do. So yeah, it's not something that you could just use with any teacher, and that's another reason why I'm not really going to worry about it right now. But anyway, one thing I will say right now that could really help is really focus on the stream of sounds. Okay, because we have different words and we put those words together, but when we're speaking, obviously there's some pauses and there's differences in intonation and stress, but when we're speaking generally, it's just like one big sound stream flow, right? And certain sounds before certain other sounds or after certain other sounds will behave in certain ways as you transition from one to the other. Focus a lot, not just on the basic sounds themselves, but how are you moving from sound to sound? So if you say, for example, sat, there's s-at. Obviously, you want to be able to do all those sounds, but it's also how do you go from s to a? Because maybe when you do s to a, maybe you could do a fine, you could do s fine, but you can't do sa fine, right? And so you have to say, okay, well, how do I transition between those two? And it's not just inside words, it's not just between words, it's the general sound stream, how things link, how things move from one sound to another in a physical, mechanical level. And if you get down to that level and really try to smooth out those details and pay attention to the way that natives actually speak, using like some audio reference, like a podcast, like I said, it's going to help you a lot. It's going to help you a lot. Okay. You can even work with like short recorded sentences. And that you'll get a lot out of just like a short little sentence. So that would be my general overall advice right now. So hopefully that's useful. Daniela Garcial. Interesting. So yes, Daniel, we would say, hi, how are you? I'm good. I'm very good. How are you? I hope everything is well. Have you seen the video Wendy Williams being shocked by her own statement like she wasn't the one who said it? I think I know what you're talking about. How dare you, Mr. Spears? You had me fooled. And you too, Mrs. Spears. Death to all of them. What? In Entourage, do you use a schwa for the syllable before Raj? No, it's ah. Because this is originally a French word. I'm pretty sure they say like en, right, with that like nasal, like entourage or something like that. And a lot of the time we'll change that into like an ah in English, entourage. If you say entourage, no, entourage. Especially because there's stress there. I was also wondering if the oo, as in cool and room, has a tiny W sound at the end. Good question. Yes and no. I'm glad you said tiny W because it doesn't have a W sound. At the end of oo, o, and ow, the end approaches the W. Okay, it's not a full-on W. A W is w, w. See, very closed. W. And the mouth inside is actually quite open, but the lips are very, very narrow. W, w. When we get to ooh, oh, ow, okay, it has that, it's moving in that direction. The lips are kind of coming together. There's some tenseness there, but they don't go all the way and they don't stick out quite as much, right? W, w, ooh, ow, w, w. So it's just not as all the way towards the W. So yes, you could call it a tiny W or a small W. I wouldn't necessarily think of it that way. If it helps you, great. But this, so like in room, like I would definitely, it's just an ooh. I wouldn't say there's any W there. Again, if you want to think of it as like a tiny W, you don't want to go all the way into room, right? It's too much. It's okay to think about it that way, but there are, when we're linking, so if I say like you, if I actually say you instead of yeah, if I say you are, okay, and we don't connect or contract it, right? Just as an example, if I say you are, there's a tiny W that links them because the oo, o, and ow get close to the W. So we get that small W between when linking to a vowel sound. In the word cool, there's actually two ways that you can use the L-colored vowels when going from oo, o, ow to ul. This also works going from E, A, and I to ul, except it's with a small Y sound. And this is one reason why I say that the dark L, the ul sound, is the half L vowel sound. Okay, because it works exactly like a vowel here. Even inside of a word, okay, you can say cool, cool, cool. Notice I don't even come as much as the ooh normally, like ooh, cool, cool. It's a little bit more open, but I'm blending them. I'm blending the ooh and the ul, cool, cool, into like one sound, right? But there's another way to do it, and you can say cool, cool. So instead of trying to blend the ooh and the ul, you can do a normal ooh, get to that ending point, which is similar to the W, and then link into the ul with that small W sound, just like you would going from an ooh sound into the next word if it started with a verb, like you are cool, you are cool. It's exactly the same. So ooh plus ul, there's two ways to do it, and it doesn't matter which one. There's no formality. It sounds perfectly fine. Good question. Yeah. I love her. She's a funny. Blah, 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 blah. Josh is definitely a low-key Britney Spears. Okay. As I said, I stopped paying attention to her, so like I don't even know now. I think there's like maybe 2 or 3 songs that I've heard like after the early 2000s that I like, because a lot of them just like, okay, yeah, it sounds catchy, but I don't really care. But I think Every Time. That's actually one of my favorite songs by her. I think it's called Every Time. But anyway, that one with the angel wings and all that, I guess. I don't know. I don't remember. Josh, what do you think of Avril Lavigne? Avril Lavigne is amazing. It's one of my favorite artists. Of course, she's Canadian, which is awesome. But yeah, no, Avril Lavigne is great. I've been listening to Avril Lavigne since a long time. God, before high school, probably since middle school. So almost 20 years, I guess. Pretty much, I guess, since like, maybe not, I don't know when exactly she started, but like Skater Boy, I think that was like one of her first big hits, and I was listening to her then. So some of her newer music is also really good. I really like a lot of her older stuff. But yeah, she's great. Do you have private classes, like face-to-face video call? I do. I am not currently accepting students. The goal is to no longer teach students. my main source of English teaching. It's probably not the exact thing you're looking for, but on Patreon, I do have the opportunity. It's $40 a month if you are a subscriber for $40 a month. One of the benefits is that you will be able to have a 1-hour consultation with me once per month. I know that's not much, but it's something. And let me double check. It says 5 of 5. It says it's sold out right now, but I think one person just dropped for some reason. I don't see them on here for whatever reason. I don't know if they have a payment issue, but if that opens back up, you can maybe grab that. But I'm not accepting new students right now in my regular classes, and I already have 2 people lined up that are going to be coming in next month. And after that, I don't know when I'm going to have any openings. So I know I'm super popular, but I can't take all of you, unfortunately. Now, in the future, I know Rachel's English has sort of like an academy, and she has like teachers under her and stuff. In the future, I might try to do something like that as well, where like I'm not directly teaching, but I have like teachers who are sort of like trained in my method and approach. And there might be something like that available. I don't know, but that's like long-term future. So don't even worry about that right now. In the pronunciation of the word just, this IPA symbol represents the first consonant in yes. So I also meant that in super fast speech, the word, oh yeah, that's right. See, that's another reason why. See, I was reading the J. I know that the J represents the Y in IPA, but because it's just, my brain didn't comprehend that that was also in IPA, even though you had it in the brackets. So from an English speaker's perspective, J is J, like the letter J is J, it's not Y. And so sometimes, even though it was in the brackets or the slashes, my brain didn't pick up on that. And absolutely not. In no way, shape, or form, under any speed conditions, no, just will never turn into yeah. You're never going to say yes or yes or no. Now, if you are a Spanish or Portuguese speaker, you might perceive it that way. But that is a problem with your ears. I would be absolutely 100% extremely shocked if you could give me like a clip, an example of somebody saying just with a Y sound. Maybe it exists and I haven't noticed it because it's like something in super, super fast speech that just goes unnoticed and it sounds fine. But I would say under no circumstances would that be a Y sound. No. I started being her man when she said, shout out to everyone with social anxiety. I kind of feel sorry for you. I felt embraced. I would find that offensive. She says, I kind of feel sorry for you. Like that seems like, number one, she's saying feel sorry for you, which is, it's not empathy, it's sympathy. It's like pity. Like, oh, that sucks for you. Like maybe like the way she said it sounded better, but just reading this, like that does not seem very good at all to me. But anyway, whatever. Oh, the chat keeps moving. I'm Brazilian. Oh, okay. So I assume you like Japanese culture. Yeah, I think it looks like a anime type image. It's kind of hard to see the small little circles in the chat. So I'm sure you probably like anime and all that stuff. So welcome. Anime for the win. Wendell has a retracted message. Okay, I've noticed while listening to some rap R&B music that a lot of the artists tend to pronounce can't as can't. That's definitely a regional thing, right? That is actually a Southern thing. Many Southerners will change a and can't into a. And I think it's actually a lot of A before, like the A before N will usually change to A. I don't know if it's uniform across all words, but I know in this word particularly, I hear it a lot in country music. If you listen to country music, you'll hear it. And the a lot of the types, the type of pronunciation that you will find a lot in like the R&B rap, you know, sort of, maybe it's straight ebonics or not. Like, I don't know. Remember, the history is horrible, unfortunately, but South slavery, right? That had an impact on the development of the pronunciation and the accent today. And so this is one of the things that's actually coming from the South. It's not coming straight from that type of like the Ebonics or something similar to that. So even in country music, you'll hear like, I don't know, like I can't. All right, so I did sort of like a half one there. Like I can't do it. I can't do it. I just can't. Right. So yeah. Oh my God, so hard. I don't even know what that's related to now. So, do you have tips on how? Wait, where are we? We're at 2.5 hours. It's going to 2 o'clock. Okay, we're gonna have to wrap up probably within the next half hour, guys. And I still haven't caught up. So let's slow down the questions a little bit. Hopefully I can catch up here. But just keep in mind, yeah, we have maybe about a half hour left. Do you have tips on how I can, not how can I, common problem. I know this isn't your question, but it bugs me. Because it's so simple. And I think teachers just don't like teach you guys this, right? And that's why you have this problem. If it's a question and the clause that it is in is a question, because here obviously you're asking a question, right? So you're asking, do you have? That's the question. The how is not the question. The how is actually a statement, right? Do you have any tips? And then the second idea, how I can improve my comprehension. So just like in a regular statement, right? I have some tips. Okay, that's a statement. So I have some tips. Where, or let's do this. I can improve my comprehension. That's a statement, right? I can improve my comprehension when you put a WH question word, including how, into a statement structure, which in this clause it is in a statement structure, even though the whole sentence is a question, you use that same statement order. So how I can. Okay, you're not going to switch it. But of course, these WH words are very often probably a little more commonly used in questions. And when they're in questions, we use the question structure. So can I improve my comprehension? Yes or no. How can I improve my comprehension? I don't know. Tell me, right? That would be the question. How can I do it? I don't know. So you have to be careful, because when you use the WH words in a second clause that is sort of explaining the question, right? What kind of tips? Well, tips about or on how I can improve my comprehension. That's the statement part of that idea. And you don't want to say, how can I? Okay, because that's not the question part. Anyway, I know that's probably confusing, but hopefully that makes sense. So do you have any tips on how I can improve my comprehension in English? I can know all words on a page, of a book, but when it comes to understanding, yes, to plus ing, it does exist. It does exist. In this case, it's because to is attached to come when it comes to doing something. Okay, there are cases where you use ing after to. Anyway, when it comes to understanding it, I need to translate it in my head. Okay, that happens with listening too. I try to translate in my head to be sure if I really got it. Good question. Well, there are strategies for reading, there are strategies for listening. And I have a book, How to Learn a Language. I give you lots of different exercises and tips and activities for based off the different skills. So there's for pronunciation, for speaking, for listening, for reading, etc. So you can check that out on Amazon if you want. How to Learn a Language, Building Your Path to Fluency. Under J. Daniel Moore. That's my author name, J. Daniel Moore. Anyway, short of that, the more you do, the better you'll get. right? What you practice is what improves. So the more you read, 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 the more words you're going to learn, the better you're going to get at reading. The more you listen, the more you listen, the more you listen, the more you listen. And I mean a lot, especially the listening. Listen and listen and listen and listen and listen and listen. You need hundreds, even thousands of hours of input. Okay. So constantly be trying to get input. I might have said output, I meant input. That's the short, general, simple answer. One of the single best, actually probably the single best thing that you can do to improve your listening skills is to train your ears to actually be able to hear all the sounds, because that helps to open up the entire language. Now, obviously there's vocabulary. If there's, if you only know so much vocabulary, you're not going to understand a lot of words, right? So it's not just the pronunciation and ear training part. You need to know words. So learn more words, right? They all kind of go together. I would make sure that you emphasize skill, right? The reading skill, the listening skill, especially the listening skill, because vocabulary and grammar are knowledge. Okay. Without the speaking, listening, reading, and writing, the vocabulary and grammar don't exist. They're meaningless. Okay. And they're not skills. Like, yes, there's active vocabulary and passive vocabulary, right? Like vocabulary that you can easily use and vocabulary that you just understand, but when you try to use it, you can't think of the word. Then it's passive. But so the passive part is just knowledge, right? It's not ability yet. As I was saying earlier, knowledge is not skill. Okay. So vocabulary, pure grammar and vocabulary are just knowledge. So as you read a lot, you're going to find new words. As you listen a lot, you're going to find new words. And you're going to get better, right? You just need more and more exposure to English. That's the number one most important thing. Get as much exposure to the language as you can, especially the listening. I strongly recommend finding a TV show that you really, really love, right? If you don't know if you love it or not, then that's okay. You can start watching it and see if you like it. Watch the first season with subtitles. Okay, make sure it has multiple seasons, preferably at least 3 or 4 seasons. First season without subtitles, with subtitles. Now you could also do it without subtitles, but to make it easy and to really get into the story, make sure you understand everything, and so you're really invested in the story and you like the characters. First season with subtitles. Every season after that, no subtitles. No subtitles. It doesn't matter if you only understand 30%, 40%, do it. Okay. And try to watch at least one episode every day, preferably more, but at least one episode every single day. If it's a 30-minute show, really try to get at least 2 a day. If it's an hour-long show, then 1 a day is like a bare minimum. That's fine. But if you do this, by the time you get to the end of the series, you're going to notice magical things start happening. Your brain is just going to start understanding more. Okay. This happened to me. It's happened to, I've heard certain polyglots mention that. So yes. And then for reading comprehension, you read more, right? You learn more words. It gets easier over time. So read, listen. Now you do say, right, that you know all the words. So it's not a vocabulary issue. You have the very classic problem that most English teachers give you, in my opinion and experience. The problem that English teachers give you is they get you to look at the language in terms of words. Okay. Now, words are important, obviously. It's vocabulary. It's a whole area. Language is not composed of words. Now, on some level, yes, we can pick out there are words, but that's not how language actually works. And this also applies to your other question about the flow. Okay, I actually forgot to mention this. Chunking. Listen to how I'm speaking. Okay, that was one chunk. Listen to how I'm speaking. It all came out as one piece. What I just said there too. It all just came out in one piece. Okay. Everything that you hear a native speaker say of pretty much any language, chunking is going to work a little bit differently from language to language. Pauses are going to work probably a little differently from language to language. Obviously, the intonation and the stress is going to work different from language to language. But listen to how things are flowing. Right now, listen to, I paused there because I was trying to think what I want to say, how things are flowing. That all came out as one piece. It's not how things are flowing as 4 words. It's one idea. It's one piece, how things are flowing. Your brain is used to trying to hear and look at, read the language word for word. And that's not how language works. Okay, it's not how language works. It is part of the step of building blocks of how we take certain sounds or letters in the written language and build them up, into words, that represent things in the world or concepts that get put into, groups of words. So on a very literal level, yes, there are words and they are part of the process. But language, you have a thought, and that thought is not composed of individual words, right? Like, let's say you're hungry and you say, I'm hungry. In any language, it could be your native language, in English, whatever. It's not the words, I am hungry. It's the thought, right? You feel the hunger and you want to communicate that to somebody. And what comes out? In English, I'm hungry. That's what you say. If it's Spanish, it's not to be, it's have, right? And they say, tengo hambre, right? So, or in English, if you're really hungry, you can say, I'm starving, I'm famished. Okay, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse, right? That's like a long chunk. I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. Technically, it's actually 2 chunks, but it doesn't matter. The point is that you need to approach the language not as individual pieces. You need to approach the language as thought units, right? So if you're listening to something or you're reading something, those thought units are being expressed to you either in visual or auditory form. And you need to try to approach it that way. So don't try to read it one word at a time. Try to read it as larger chunks. Okay, and this is one reason why we have commas and dashes and stuff, because it helps separate out certain chunks when we need to. But just because you don't see a comma doesn't necessarily mean that it's just one big chunk. It's a little more complicated than that, but I think you get the point. Okay, try to approach language in this way, and you're probably going to see some very interesting results. I do have a video, I think it's called the thought chunking exercise or something like that. And you can look that up to get a better idea of like what chunking is and how it works. I'll be making more lessons like that in the future too. Wendell, as I try speaking as a native speaker, I want to know what some of the idealized American English features are in contrast to any native accent or dialect in the USA. Well, if you're going for the idealized American accent, which is partially fake, then you go to almost any other teacher, and they're going to teach you that exact idealized accent that no natives actually speak. I wouldn't even worry too much about this. And it's actually, it's not the right question. It's based on a false assumption. Okay. In real life American English, okay, like let's say for example, because they usually try to say like the Midwest, or maybe like the Northern Midland is like the neutral accent, right? That's the ideal accent. And that's not true. Because yes, it does sound neutral. It sounds perfectly fine. I sound neutral. I sound perfectly fine. Somebody from Western New England sounds neutral and perfectly fine. A lot of people in the Midwest that aren't from the North Midwest, just the regular Midwest, sound neutral and perfectly fine. Alaska, same thing. most areas, Florida, even. Not everybody in Florida, of course, but I've heard a lot of people from Florida, and I had no idea they were from Florida because they sounded perfectly neutral to me. So every neutral sounding, like generally neutral sounding like accent is an accent. So even though I don't like to say I have an accent, because if you ask me, I'd be like, I don't have an accent. If you ask somebody from Iowa, they're going to tell you they don't have an accent. If you ask somebody from New England, they're going to say I don't have an accent. If you ask somebody from Florida, they're probably going to tell you I don't have an accent. And all of us are correct, and all of us are wrong. We're all correct because we all speak similarly enough that we all sound American, and we generally sound pretty close to each other. Okay. If you really listen, you really get down to some of the details. Yeah, there's a couple little differences with the vowels. Some people say news. Some people say news. I say news. So sometimes maybe there's a little added sound or a drop sound here or there, but generally we're going to sound pretty much the same. And so we are correct in saying that we don't have an accent. And yet the reality under the surface, the small little details, especially with things like the cot merger, those small little details point to the fact that we do have an accent. Now, it's not just that like there's one part of the country that is the neutral accent. We're all the neutral accent. This sort of North Midland neutral accent is still an accent. It's still an accent. Okay. Just like mine is an accent, but we're both neutral. Okay. So really the biggest areas, I mean, there's little pockets here and there. There's little regional things of some little shifts, like the pin-pen merger in Bakersfield, California. That's a really small regional thing. And I think that might be spreading to some other parts of California, but it's a very small regional thing. You don't have to worry about that. The biggest things that are going to stand out is the South. To a lesser extent, the North, not the North Midland, but the North, like Minnesota, maybe a bit of Wisconsin, North Dakota, right? South Dakota, where we start getting some weird changes like Minnesota. Soda. I'm from Minnesota. Or if you go down to North Dakota, they start getting the A's like Canadians a bit or whatever. Then you're getting a little bit of an accent, right? In the South, there's a range of Southern accents, but that's when we start talking a bit more like this, maybe get a little bit more of a Southern drawl, and these vowel sounds really start shifting around in your mouth, and we start getting a lot more certain reductions and cutting of certain things, like certain things, cutting of certain things. Whatever, right? That's very clearly an accent. It sounds American. It sounds like the American South, but it doesn't sound neutral, right? We wouldn't say that's general American. And then, of course, up in New York, there's also a bit of a range of accents, and I have a horrible New York accent. I don't even really want to do it, but what you talking about? That's just God, that was awful. That's now recorded. It's like I can hear it in my head, but I haven't mapped it to my mouth enough to be able to do it. You get the point, right? You know how some New Yorkers sound. They have that like clear New Yorker accent, or from what is it? Boston. I'm from Boston. It's Boston. Let me get some. You want to get a? Was it coffee? Let me go get a coffee. Get in the car. We get a coffee, right? Like that's obviously an accent. So as long as you're not, like if you want to have that general American sound, right? That's why I'm trying to teach you in the way that will still sound natural, still sound neutral, okay, completely neutral, but that is as easy as possible. So for example, I give you the cot merger because now you have to learn one sound instead of two. It'll still sound neutral, okay? Do you want to say leg or leg? It doesn't matter. Pick one, whichever one you like, or whichever one is easier for you. There you go. Right. So that's a big part of my goal, is taking this whole big mess of the reality of American English and the fact that we actually have a spectrum of neutral accents, and trying to say, hey, this is the easiest way to do it. Now, you don't have to do it that way, but if you want the easiest way, this is the easiest way to do it and still sound neutral and natural. That's one of my big goals here. Now, there are certain features of American English that will create the American accent as opposed to, say, a British accent. And the big things that you really want to be focusing on. But you will most likely be able to tell if an American has an accent that is not under the general American neutral sounding umbrella, like from the South. You're going to hear that difference. So I would not even worry about that. Because most of us will sound pretty much the same. Can you, as a native of the language, realize that I am not a native because I'm using that idealized American English? No, because the semi-fake idealized version that most teachers teach you, it still sounds neutral. It's just the exact details of what they teach don't actually match any particular native speaker, or if there are native speakers who match it, it's a pretty small amount. At least that's what my research tells me. And it's actually, if you go back far enough, it's originally in some ways based on the British received pronunciation. So it's a big mess. It's really a big mess. If you were to pronounce exactly the way they're, because as I said earlier, like there's some actors and newscasters, who come from anywhere in the country, it doesn't really matter, and they take classes like that for that sort of idealized accent, and nobody's really going to notice. If they do it perfectly, they're going to sound neutral, right? But I don't really understand why they even take those, because unless you come from the South or something, we're not really going to notice anything anyway. But if you do it right, like if you're actually hitting the vowels, if you have a good American type flow and stress and rhythm pattern and all this stuff, then no, we're not going to be able to tell. It doesn't sound, this neutral idealized accent, it doesn't sound like an accent. Just like my speech, I wouldn't say sounds like an accent. It's an accent, but it doesn't really sound like one. It generally sounds neutral. So, yeah. Anyway, whatever. Women usually have richer speech patterns in terms of intonation or melody, so I usually feel tempted to shadow their speech. I've been trying to adopt a parent, aka finding someone to shadow consistently, so I've narrow targeted hit opposed to just sounding American. But I kind of feel like men's speech patterns are usually somewhat boring, so what do you think to do to remedy that? So many related questions here. I don't even know what's happening. Super chat keeps moving. Is shadowing a woman's speech pattern is going to be detrimental to me, or is there something I can do to not sound feminine? This is a good question. So obviously in some languages, there's different ways that men and women speak, like grammatically. English, not so much. Or that one might tend to use, I think women probably use the word cute more often. Not that a guy can't use the word cute. In terms of our intonation patterns and stuff, I think women, which I don't recommend using the uptalk intonation pattern, but I think more often than not, women will tend to use that type of pattern. So you want to make sure, if you are shadowing a female speaker, that they don't have the uptalk, if you want to avoid the uptalk. Not saying that most women have uptalk. I'm just saying the speakers who use uptalk, which is when you're speaking like this all the time, and then you're just always going up at the end of every thought. Okay. Within that group of speakers who do that, I think, I don't have any research on it, but it seems to be mostly women who do that. But you generally don't have to worry about that. Just make sure you don't hear that up intonation constantly, and you'll be fine. But I don't know if women usually have richer speech patterns. I mean, if that's what you've noticed, then okay, fine, I guess. Maybe men are just boring. I guess I'm pretty boring, so maybe. I think in English, it doesn't matter. It really, yeah. In fact, what might be a good strategy, because I like the parent strategy. That's a very good strategy. Also good for grammar, good for other skills that aren't language related and all that stuff. But you could find two parents, right? Because ideally, right, you have a father and a mother, right? So you can find a female speaker and a male speaker, and just use both of them. just mix it up, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. No. I can't say 100%, but I probably wouldn't worry about it. But especially if you mix it up, like you have a male and a female, then definitely, I think you should be perfectly fine. Because that also might help you notice, like if there are any, like, say, intonational differences or this or that, then listening to the males, and then you listen to like the female saying, a similar sentence or the same sentence, maybe you'll start to notice, oh, okay, this sounds like, in this particular case, in this context, like a man might say a little bit more like this or whatever. But I don't think that really matters too much in English. I could be wrong. The tricky part is you'll get different responses from different natives. If you speak General American, you're supposed to sound like you're not from anywhere. Exactly. And yet there are certain features in that idealized variety that many native speakers don't use. A before ng, using unmerged a and la and law. And then the R-colored a, where most people use o. Also using an L-colored schwa in bulb, golf, cult. I think General American English is a good start, but then it comes down to you adjusting your pronunciation based on the actual native dialect. And yes, very good. I.e. Western American English to truly sound like a native and not a dictionary voice. Yeah. But yeah. Thank you. You're welcome. Could you send the link here to be one of your students next time? Well, as I said, I don't know if I'm going to have any openings. I'm actually hoping that by the end of next year, I don't know if this is going to be possible, but by the end of next year, I will not be teaching actively. I'll still be making YouTube channel videos. I'll still be here, but I won't be teaching anymore. That's my plan. And you can look for me on iTalki. And you'll probably find me, although I might not come up in the search. Or you could just email me later if you want. But the chances of getting in, because number one, I generally try not to accept students from you guys, because number one, that's not my goal. My goal is actually to give you as much as you need to not need a teacher. You do still need some sort of feedback, which can just come from any native for like how you sound and stuff. But my goal is to erase the need for a teacher as much as possible with this channel. I'm not here to get new students like a lot of other teachers might be. But number two, so aside from the fact that I don't really want to accept you guys, because if I accept one of you guys, and like I accept all of you guys, and I just like, I'm going in the opposite direction. I'm trying to wind down on my teaching, not ramp up on my teaching. So that even without that, the chances of you getting in are very, 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 very small, very small. So yeah. Do you pronounce the words protest and process differently when they're used as verbs as opposed to nouns? There's a protest. I'm going to protest. No. It's a process. It's processing. No. Process, I think, can go both ways. Like it could be process. No, that's not right. I'm thinking of a different word. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, protest and process, they're going to be the same. Maybe speak, you might be able to switch the stress pattern or something, but to me it sounds kind of weird. Let's see what the dictionary says. Protest. So it says noun is protest, verb is protest or protest. Yes, okay, so to me, if you say protest, like I protest, it sounds like some dude in a powdered wig from the 1800s, like to me at least. Like I'm sure there's people who use it that way, but like it sounds very dated. So I would say the noun and the verb the same, protest. I mean, maybe if you say like protesting, like there are many people protesting right now, like it sounds kind of okay, but I would say protesting. Process. I think. Process. Yeah, the dictionary is only listing one pronunciation for process, regardless if it's a noun or a verb. Unless it's British, in which case a process. Yeah. But actually, this is an interesting thing here. Because earlier, David, you were asking about like how I would separate out the syllables for mistake. So with process, actually, now yes, we could still get that linking thing, but if you were to say like, how would you separate this? Like right now, process. I'd probably do it that way. Because even if the S can still sound sort of like it's bridging to the ah, like from the ah to the S, it really, it definitely sounds like it's ses, right? Like it's actually connected to the F for sure, even if it still might sound like it's connected to the ah also. So even in that case, for like the bridge sounds, I would still probably move it over like that. Even though in the dictionary, I just look at the dictionary right now and they have it as pros S. And I think that just completely destroys, like it nukes. I can't even think of a better word. Like it's like a supernova turning into a black hole, just destruction of the flow of the English language if you were to do it the way the dictionary wants you to do it. Because you say like, oh, it's a process. Like, no, thanks dictionary. You ruined my speech. Which for me is actually really interesting that they actually put the S over on the take and mistake. I would expect them to do it the other way. But anyway, whatever. Moving on. Oh, I see we had that question again. Wait, no, where am I? Oh, I see. Okay, do you pronounce the word? Oh, yeah, I just did that. Ugh, guys, okay, it's going on 3 hours. I'm going to cut the questions. No more questions. We're done with the questions. We're going to finish up here. I know it's largely my fault because I have to like spend like 5 minutes on every answer. Okay. Where was I? I will find it. Okay. Students took to the streets to protest the new law. To the streets to protest the new law. Yeah, there. I mean, you could say protest. It's okay, but to protest the new law. Yeah. He protested that the trip was too far by car. He protested that okay, sure, you could do it that way. I still want to say protested. So yeah, maybe for protest, I mean, you could do it the other way, but I don't think it really matters that much, actually. To me, it just sounds better to say pro. People in the street process slowly through the city. I mean proceeded. Processed is not the right word there. I couldn't quite process what exactly happened. Yes. That's good. Which, by the way, a lot of Canadians will also say process, like the British pronunciation. The interesting thing about Canadian speech is a lot of speakers will generally sound American, but there's a couple things that like Americans sort of broke off the British pronunciation from, but Canadians kept. And so there's some weird little combinations, like they'll say process instead of process. And I guess in your first example sentence, people in the street, I guess I would kind of want to say like processed, but it's like that doesn't even work either. Process slowly through this. I don't know. Like maybe that's a correct word of the correct use of process, but that just seems like the wrong word to me. And I would say proceeded slowly through the city. Sometimes when cuentas gratis. Welcome. Sometimes when native speakers, why is this? Oh, okay, I see. Sometimes when native speakers say something, I listen. They say something, th sound like a d or t. Okay, I think I know what you're saying here. What you're probably hearing is the dental D or T. So in English, we have t and d. Okay, it's not like the Spanish th and d. You don't touch the teeth, t, d. But the th sound has a variation. I actually just posted a lesson about this recently, where it doesn't actually have to be flat on the teeth, but it's more flat than the normal T or D. And we want sort of more like that Spanish, like flatter T or D type sound instead of the crisper t, d in English. And so the easy thing is to put it on the teeth. And so you can say here, thing is a voiceless th, so it would be a dental t. So it'd be something, thing, thing. Okay, you don't want to say something. That would be completely wrong and sound bad. Okay, that's probably what you're hearing. It sounds well. You say it's a D. It definitely shouldn't be a D. It's not some dean like regular D, dental D. That doesn't work at all. So I don't know why you're hearing that. Maybe there's a way to say it that I'm just not thinking of. But there should never be a D there. No. But to you, it could be that that dental T kind of sounds like a D. Something, something. Because the dental T and D can sound quite similar. T, 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 something T, something D, something T, something D. So that's probably what's happening. Your ears might be a little bit off, and it's actually the dental T that you're hearing, which seems to be like a T or a D. But it's just a variation for the TH sound. I watched your video about it, but can you explain to me how to do the lazy version of the TH sound? Is the voiced one kind of like a V with a different tongue position? Definitely not a V. No, you don't want to mix F and V with TH. Those are very separate sounds. Sometimes, of course, they can sound, I mean, they do sound quite similar, but you don't want to try to mix them. No, they're separate sounds. Okay, the lazy version of the TH sound. So you're based on asking if it's like a V with a different tongue position, you're going the wrong direction because the V starts involving the lips. You don't want to involve the lips. Okay. So normally the TH, right, there's the between the teeth version, right? That's the super clearly enunciated one. That's not the way we normally do it. We go behind the teeth, okay, without completely making contact, because otherwise it's not really going to work. It could, but I'm not going to worry about that right now, because we want the air to still flow, right? You can kind of see the size of the teeth there, because just you can see that, but it's the front of the tongue is like right there, and again that could be anywhere behind here. So I'm sure you get that because you're asking about the lazy one, but I feel I need to explain that first, especially so everybody's on the right page. The lazy one is where it's like a variation of that one that I just explained, where it's not between the teeth, it's right behind the teeth, except you're going to be a little farther back. That's all it is. That's literally the only thing you're going to do. You're not going to get as close to the teeth with your tongue. That's it. There's nothing special that you do with your tongue or anything like that. You just don't get as close to the teeth. Now, obviously, in isolation, when we do it with me doing it like that, it sounds kind of weird. It doesn't quite sound like a th. It sounds more like an h, which is what I said in the video. Because we don't do it in isolation, we do it in the flow of faster speech, or as I said, maybe going to certain sounds like pulling into the because the is back here. There. I'm not saying other. There. Okay. Or if it were voiceless, I even say with something. Okay, I could use it there too. If I say quickly, something, thing, something. I'm just a little bit behind, a little bit farther, just a little bit farther back than than normal. That's all. So I know, but that's the point. Don't bring in the lips or anything like that. Just not something that you ever have to do. It can make you speak a little bit more easily, a little bit faster. But as I said, if you're enunciating in any way, you're speaking more clearly, you don't want to use that anyway. So it's not something that you have to do. Okay. It's just something that you should be aware of. And that if you want to use it to help you speak faster and more easily, which is really more of a later issue. Like if you don't even have a lot of the basic sounds yet, you should definitely get those basic sounds first. You know, don't worry about like the lazy versions too much until you have like the basic clear versions, because you need those first. But once you have those and you're kind of like, okay, yeah, I want to speak a little faster, then you can start using these little tweaks to do the lazier versions. That explanation of chunking was life-changing. Oh, well, thank you. I didn't know it was that great, but I guess so. Fernando. And I know I'm going to make a short for you, Fernando, for the question you asked earlier. I haven't forgotten about that. Is the tongue position the same for... Well, that second one looks like an IPA symbol. So I'm going to say O, ah, and or. Okay, I think I know what we're asking here. No, for O and or, yes. Essentially, there might be a tiny little bit of difference in the exact placement, but it's around the same area. It's part of the same range of area. So O, or. It's just that with the O, you're going to start in about the same position with the back of the tongue. You're going to blend into, immediately start blending into the sound. Just like with ah, we say R. Okay, you don't really hear the ah part because it immediately starts blending with the R. So those are about the same, but the second one that you mentioned, I believe that should be ah, right? That's going to be farther down. That's below the O. So it's ah, o, oo, ah, o, oo. So the tongue is going to be higher or lower, but it's all in the back of the tongue. Yes, on the back of the tongue. Good question. Directions too. Early in my channel, and I had one video for it, and I realized that I wanted to get through the basic sounds first. And I'm pretty much done with the basic sounds for the most part, but I'm trying to finish up the main pronunciation course. But I do have a plan to make a whole like little series about how to pronounce contractions, including like the clearly enunciated form, like say, for example, we are. Fully enunciated is e, we're. Very commonly, it gets pronounced as either we're with an I, which e or I are colored is the same thing. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. In the case of we're, it just, to me, it sounds a little clearer if I go all the way into E, but that's a different topic. That's the R colored vowels. But you can actually reduce we're to were. So it sounds like the past tense of like you were, you are, you were. So to say like we are going, we're going, we're going, right? So I'm going to talk about like the clearly enunciated way, the reduced ways, how to say them if you uncontract them, like we are, there's a small little Y between because of the E to the ah. I'm going to be talking about all that. Yes, don't worry about it. I will be making videos for that. Hair Loudon is pronouncing don't, wouldn't so fast that I can't even hear it clearly. Well, that's also another trick there because say, for example, with don't, won't, and also can't. One trick we have to speak faster is we'll drop the T, we'll drop the N, and we'll nasalize the vowel. Okay, and this creates the illusion of the N, and then we know it's negative because obviously do is positive. Well, with can't, it can still be a little unclear. That's so can and can't is its own little problem. But with won't and don't, obviously will and do are the positives, so we're not going to confuse them. So for example, if you say I don't like it, you can say I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't. You can even flap that D. I don't like it. Don't like. I'm not closing into an N at any point. I'm just nasalizing the O. I don't like it. I don't like it. And you actually technically don't even have to like really nasalize it that much. You can actually like, oh, like I don't like it, I don't like it. But we tend to get a bit of that nasal to replace the N. Again, that's faster speech. If you're speaking more slowly, you say, I don't like it. It can sound a bit weird. Wouldn't is its own little problem because of the dint at the end. And don't worry, I'll be talking about all that. I'm gonna have a whole series. There's a lot to talk about on that topic. It's gonna be a mini series. Chameleon Chen, welcome. Ing in standing ovation can be pronounced as in. Get a standing ovation. Get a standing ovation. Get a standing ovation. If you're speaking quickly, yeah, it doesn't sound bad to me. But it's not supposed to be. No. It should be in. Which that it could be standing, ing, plus ng. That's how some Americans speak. The way that other Americans, such as myself, speak still sounds neutral, still sounds natural, is instead of you use e, and instead of you use n, in. If you do that, then it's going to sound fine. But using in with plus n instead of e plus n, maybe only in fast speech. So standing ovation, standing ovation. How do you say results in, results in, results in, results in? Like that. So result. So that some speakers will use an L-colored schwa. I don't have an L-colored schwa in my speech. You don't have to use it. They'll say results. Or you could just use that half L, the dark L, result, result, and then tss, tss. There's no T there. There's the illusion of a T. You're pushing the S through the T. Tss. Okay. And then the in can just kind of be like a little schwa with an N, sin, or even a little I with an N instead of like results in, results in, it results in many things, results in, sin. Almost kind of sounds like you're going from the S straight into the N. And sight unseen. A couple ways that you can do this. There's various rules that can apply here. The first way I said it, sight unseen, I stopped the T. And then started that un from that stop, sight unseen. That's one perfectly common way to do it. Of course, we know here you can flap the D into the next vowel and say sight unseen, sight unseen. It's another perfectly common way to do it. Both are wrong, or both are wrong. I was gonna say neither are wrong. Both are perfectly fine. There's no formality here. It's neutral, natural. It's just variation, normal, natural variation based on a couple different rules that can apply in the same case. Sight unseen, yeah. Can T encounter be flapped? No, but it can be dropped. The reason it can't be flapped is because there's an N before it. The reason it can be dropped is because there's an N before it. The presence of that N, we get the NT plus vowel rule, which happens pretty much all the time between words. It doesn't have to if you're enunciating, like want it. You don't have to drop the T. But most commonly we will. But it also inside of words, it's not 100% of the time, but still very, 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 very frequently. Most of the time you see NT plus vowel inside of a word, you can still drop the T. So we'll say counter. If you try to flap the D, there's no flapping because the N is already here. So you have to say counter. It's physically impossible unless you're going to separate it like that. We're not going to separate it like that. You can't just flap from the N, right? So that would be very, very unnatural. Okay, we're almost caught up here, almost done. Finally, let's see here. You look like an English nut. So, okay. This sounds so funny. Can you suggest me? Not in a bad way. Like your grammar and your usage of that is perfectly fine. It's just like to me the phrase just sounds so entertaining. Not in a bad way, in a good way. Can you suggest me some YouTube channels to improve my ears? Don't teaching channels, just common native ones. Not teaching channels, not teaching channels. Yeah, I don't know. David would probably know about that. English learner nut. So English nut works fine here to mean like learning English. Could be learning or just like about the English language. It doesn't matter. But if you change it, we're gonna say English learning nut. Because if you say English learner nut, number one, that sounds kind of weird, but number two, it sounds like you're saying that David is a nut, meaning like crazy, like not smart or kind of stupid, while being an English learner. So English learning nut would mean nut how you're trying to use it related to English learning. Like, really highly focused on learning English and kind of maybe obsessed with it, kind of. English learner, not, yeah. That's difficult because everything I learned is like a combination of 50 different sources. I just started with watching interviews of singers, actors I like. That's a good place. Interviews are very, very good, very, very natural usually. I then supplemented them with Rachel's English's. Yes, that is correct. Good. Rachel's English's Ben Franklin exercises, and tried to create my own Ben Franklins with dialogues from videos. Perfect. Absolutely perfect, David. Very good job. That explains why, that helps to explain why your pronunciation is so very, very good, because you're doing the right things. I've been watching a lot of YouTubers who vlog daily these past few years, but it is absolutely essential that you like them as people. Exactly. It'll keep you watching. I can give you suggestions, but chances are you'll find them annoying. No, maybe not. Anyway, so Gabriel, please continue. My way of studying is not working for me anymore. I need all the tips you can give. Talking about nuts, there's a little bedtime story for kids here on YouTube called yeah, I can tell just from the title. Innuendos. Anyway, if you don't know that word, you can look it up. Innuendo. That's what's going on there. So I'm pretty sure that's how you spell it. It's a very uncommon word. Yeah, I don't know. We're pretty much done, unfortunately. We're at 3 hours and 16 minutes. You say, Gabriel, that your way of studying is not working anymore and you need tips. We can talk about that next time, if you can come next week. I don't want to leave you hanging, but like, I mean, I gotta go. So, if you can, right, the more specific that you are with like what you're doing and what you think isn't working, the number one, the easier it is to fix it. Oh, it has two ends. Yeah, that looks right. That is very good. It's just not a word. Good catch there. You corrected the English teacher. Congratulations. I didn't find you in italki. Yeah, you're probably not going to. That's fine. I don't like giving the link because then I'm probably just going to get like hundreds of messages from people, and as I said, I'm trying not to accept from the community here. So anyway, yeah, Gabriel, if you can get down some specifics, bring it next time. That'll help. Different areas of English, what you've done, what you haven't done. You don't have to make like a big, long, complicated thing, but just kind of what are you doing now that you think is not working, and what are your goals? Like, if you can get some of that information, then we can talk about that next time. Thank you for all the innuendos today, and hopefully the second part of the day will be better than the morning. Well, so far it has been, so that's good. I consume a lot on YouTube, psychology scientists, curl hair, well, Netflix and that stuff, but I consume it without noticing their different accents. Bye. Okay, well, train your ears. Focus on your ears. Focus on your ears. It's going to be hard to hear at first, but and a lot of the time, as I said, most Americans sound pretty much the same. Okay, so it really doesn't matter that much. But yes, bye-bye. I got to go, guys. Thank you very much, and see you next week, same time.